Heart of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 13. Ignacio's Oath. At sunrise on the following day I lit a fire by which to prepare soup for the señor, who still slept, and as I was engaged thus I saw the Lady Maya walking towards me, and noticed that her hands and feet were swollen. "Señora," I said, bowing before her, "I humbly congratulate you upon your courage and your escape from great dangers. Last night I said words to you in my grief that should not have been spoken, for it is my fault that I am apt to be unjust to women. I crave your pardon, and I will add that if, in atonement for my past injustice, I can serve you in any way now and afterwards, I pray you command me." She listened and answered, "I thank you for your kind words, Don Ignacio, and I forget other words that were not kind, which you have spoken to me from time to time. If in truth you wish to show yourself my friend, it is in your power to do so. You have guessed my secret. Therefore, I am not ashamed to repeat that the señor yonder has become everything to me, though as yet I may be little to him. I ask you then to swear upon the heart that you will do nothing to turn him away from me, or to separate us should he ever learn to love me, but rather, should this come about, that whatever may be our need, you will help us by all means in your reach. You ask me to swear a large oath, señora, and one that deals with the future of which we have no knowledge," I answered, hesitating. "I do, señor, but remember that, were it not for me at this moment, your friend, who sleeps yonder like a child, would be stiff in death. Remember also that you have ends to gain in the City of the Heart, where it will be well for you to keep me as a friend should we ever live to reach it. Still, do not swear unless you wish. Only then I shall know that you are my secret enemy, and I shall be yours." "There is no need to threaten me, señora," I answered, "nor am I to be moved thus, but I promise that I will not stand between you and the señor. Why should I? His will is his own, and, as you say, you saved his life. But see, he awakes, and his soup is ready." She took the pot off the fire, skimmed it, and poured the contents into a gourd. "Shall I take it, or will you?" she asked. "I think you'd better take it," I answered. She walked to the hammock and said, "Señor, here is your soup." He was but newly awakened, and looked at her vacantly. "Tell me, Maya," he asked, "what has happened?" "Last evening," she began, "in picking a flower for me, you were bitten by a snake and very nearly died." "I know," he answered. "Without doubt I should have died had you not sucked the wound and tied the bandage round my wrist, for that grey snake is the deadliest in the country. Go on." "After the danger of the poison was past, you became thirsty, so thirsty that you were dying of it, and there was no water to give you." Yes, he said, "it was agony. I pray that I may never suffer so again, but I drank the water and lived. Who brought it to me?" "My father started on to the next camping place where there is a pool," she answered. "Has he returned?" "No, not yet." "Then he cannot have brought the water. Where did it come from?" "It came from the cueva, that cave which we examined before you were bitten." Who went down the cueva to get it? The place is unclimbable." "I went down." "You?" he said in amazement. "You? It is not possible. Do you jest? Tell me the truth quickly. I am tired." "I am not jesting. Listen, señor. You were dying for want of water, dying before our eyes. It was horrible to see. I could not bear it, and I knew that my father would not be back in time. So I took the water skin and some torches and went without saying anything to Ignatio. The shaft was hard to climb and the adventure strange. I will tell you of that by and by, but as it chanced I came through it safely to find Ignatio about to start on the same errand." The señor heard and understood, but he made no answer. He only stretched out his arm towards her, and there and thus in the wilderness did they plight their troth. "Remember, I am but an Indian girl," she murmured presently, "and you are one of the white lords of the earth. Is it well that you should love me?" "It is well," he answered, "for you are the noblest woman that I have known, and you have saved my life." Zibalbay did not return till past midday, when he appeared with the water, leading the mule, which had set its foot upon the sharp stone in the desert and gone lame. "Does he still live?" he asked of Maya. "Yes, father." "He must be a strong man," he answered. "I thought that thirst would have killed him ere now." "He has had water, father. I descended the /cueva and fetched it," she added after a little moment's pause. The old man looked at her amazed. "How came it that you found courage to go down that place, daughter?" he asked at length. "The desire to save a friend gave me courage," she answered, letting her eyes fall beneath his gaze. "I knew that you could not be back in time, so I went." Zibalbay pondered a while, then said, "I think that you would have done better to let him die, daughter, for I believe that this white man will bring trouble upon us. It has pleased the gods to preserve you alive. Remember, then, that your life belongs to them, and that you must follow the path which they have chosen, not that which you would choose for yourself. Remember also that one waits you in the city yonder, who may have a word to say as to your friendship with this wanderer." And he passed on with the mule. That same evening Maya told me of her father's words, and said, "I think that before all is done I shall need the help that you have sworn to give me, señor, for I can see well that my father will be against me unless my wish runs with his purpose. Of one thing I am sure, that my life is my own and not a possession of the gods, for in such gods as my father worships and I was brought up to serve, I have lost faith, if indeed I ever had any." "You speak rashly," I answered, "and if you are wise you will not let your father hear such words." "Lest by and by my life should be forfeit to those gods whom I blaspheme," she broke in. "Stay, then. Do you believe in those gods, Don Ignatio?" "No, lady. I am a Christian, and have no part with idols and those who worship them." "I understand. It is only in their wealth that you would have part. Well, why should I not become a Christian also? I have learned something of your faith from the señor yonder, and see that it is great and pure and full of comfort and for us mortals." "May grace be given to you to follow in that road, lady, but it is not Christian to taunt me about the wealth which I come to seek for the advantage of our race, seeing that you know I ask for nothing for myself." "Forgive me," she answered. "My tongue is sharp, as yours has been at times, Don Ignatio. Hark, the señor calls me." For 2 more days we rested there by the cueva, till the señor was fit to travel again. Then we started on. 10 days we journeyed across the wilderness, following the line of the ancient road, and meeting with no traces of man, save such as were furnished by the familiar sight of ruined pyramids and temples. On the 11th we began to ascend the slopes of the lofty range of mountains that pushed its flanks far out into the desert land, and on the 12th we reached the snow line, where we were obliged to abandon the 3 mules which remained to us, seeing that no green food was to be found higher up, and the path became too steep for them to find a footing on it. That night we slept with little to eat in a hole dug in the snow, wrapped in our serapes, or rather we tried to sleep, for the rest was broken by the cold and the moaning of the bitter and mysterious winds which sprang up and passed away suddenly beneath a clear sky. Also, from time to time, the thunder of distant avalanches rushing from the peaks above. "How far must we travel up this snow?" I asked of Zibalbay, as we stood shivering in the ashy light of the dawn. "Look yonder," he answered, pointing to where the first ray of the sun shone upon the surface of black rock far above us. "There is the highest point, and we should reach it before nightfall." Thus encouraged, we pushed forward for hour after hour, Zibalbay marching ahead in silence, until our sight was bewildered with snow blindness, and I was seized with a fit of mountain sickness. Fortunately, the climbing was not difficult, so that by 4 in the afternoon we found ourselves beneath the shadow of the wall of black rock. "Must we scale that precipice?" I asked Zibalbay. "No," he answered, "it would not be possible without wings. There is a way through it. Twice in the old days bodies of white men searching for the golden city to sack it came to this spot, but finding no path through the cliff, they went home again, though their hands were on the door." "Does the wall of the rock encircle all the valley of the city?" asked the señor. "No, white man, it ends many days' journey away to the west, but he who would travel round it must wade through a great swamp. Also, the mountains may be crossed to the east by journeying for 3 days through snows and down precipices, but so far as I have learned, only one man lived to pass them, a wandering Indian who found his way to the banks of the holy waters in the days of my grandfather. Now stay here while I search." "Are you glad to see the gateway of your home, Maya?" I heard the señor ask. "No," she answered almost fiercely, "for here in the wilderness I have been happy, but there sorrow awaits me, and you. Oh, if indeed I am dear to you, let us turn even now and fly together back to the lands where your people live." And she clasped his hand and looked earnestly into his eyes. "What?" he answered. "And leave your father and Ignatio to finish the journey by themselves?" "You are more to me than my father, though perhaps this solemn Ignatio is more to you than I am." "No, Maya, but having come so far, I wish to see the sacred city." "As you will," she said, letting fall his hand. "See, my father has found the place and calls us." We walked on for about 100 paces, threading our path through piles of boulders that lay at the foot of the precipice, till we came to where Zibalbay stood, leaning against the wall of rock in which we could see no break or opening. "Although I trust you, and, as I believe, Heaven has brought us together for its own purposes," said the old /cacique, "yet I must follow the ancient customs and obey my oath to suffer no stranger to see the entrance to this mountain gate. Come hither, daughter, and blindfold these foreigners." She obeyed, and she tied the handkerchief about the señor's face. I heard her whisper, "Fear not, I will be your eyes." Then we were taken by the hand and led this way and that till we grew confused. After we had walked some paces, we were halted and left while, as we judged from the sounds, our guides moved something heavy. Next we were conducted down a steep incline through a passage so narrow and low that our shoulders rubbed the sides of it, and in parts we were obliged to bend our heads. At length, after taking many sharp turns, the passage became wider and the path smooth and level. "Loose the bandages," said the voice of Zibalbay. Maya did so, and when our eyes were accustomed to the light, we looked round us curiously to find that we stood at the bottom of a deep cleft or volcanic rift in the rock, made not by the hand of man, but by that of nature working with her tools of fire and water. This cleft, along which ran a road so solidly built and drained that, save now and again where snowdrifts blocked it, it was still easily passable after centuries of disuse, did not measure more than 40 paces from wall to wall. On either side of it towered sheer black cliffs, honeycombed with doorways that could only have been reached by ladders. "What are those?" I asked Zibalbay. "Burying places?" "No," he answered, "dwelling houses. They were there, so say the records, before our forefathers founded the city of the Heart, and in them dwelt cave men, barbarians who fed on little and did not feel the cold. It was by following some of the cave men through that passage which we have passed that the founder of the ancient city discovered this cleft, and the good country and the great lake that lie beyond it, where the rock dwellers whom our forefathers killed out used to live in the winter season. Once, when I was young, with some companions, I entered these caves by means of ropes and ladders, and found many strange things there, such as stone axes and rude ornaments of gold, relics of the barbarians. But let us press on, or night will overtake us in the pass." By degrees the great cleft that had widened as we walked began to narrow again, till it appeared to end in a second wall of rock. Passing round a boulder that lay at the foot of this wall, Zibalbay led the way into a small tunnel beyond. "Do not fear the darkness," he said. "The passage is short, and there are no pitfalls." So we followed the sound of his footsteps through the gloom, till presently a spot of light appeared before us. In another minute we stood on the further side of the mountain, though we could see nothing of the places because of the falling shadows. Without pausing, Zibalbay pushed on down the hill, and suddenly turning to the right, stopped before the door of a house built of hewn stone. "Enter," he said, "and welcome to the country of the people of the Heart." As the door was thrown open, light from the fire within streamed through it, and a man's voice was heard asking, "Who's there?" Without answering, Zibalbay walked into the room. It was a low vaulted apartment, and at a table placed before the great fire which burnt upon the hearth sat a man and a woman eating. "Is this the way you watch for my return?" he asked in a stern voice. "Haste now and make food ready, for we are starved with cold and hunger." The man who had risen stood hesitating, but the woman, whose position enabled her to see the face of the speaker, caught him by the arm, saying, "Down to your knees, husband. It is the /cacique come back." "Pardon," cried the man, obeying. "To be frank, O lord, it has been so dinned in my ears down in the city yonder that neither you nor the Lady of the Heart would ever return again, that I thought you must be ghosts. Yes, and so they will think in the city, where I have heard that Tikal rules in your place." "Peace," said Zibalbay, frowning heavily. "We left robes here, did we not? Go lay them out in the sleeping chambers, and with them others for these my guests, while the woman prepares our meat." The man bowed, stretching out his arms till the backs of his hands touched the ground. Then, taking an earthenware lamp from the side table, he lit it and disappeared behind a curtain, an example which the woman followed after she had rapidly removed the dishes that were upon the table and fed the fire with wood. When they were gone, we gathered round the hearth to bask in the luxury of its warmth. "What is this place?" asked the señor. Zibalbay, who was wrapped in his own thoughts, did not seem to hear him, and Maya answered, "A poor hovel that is used as a rest house, and by hunters of game, no more. These people are its keepers, and were charged to watch for our return, but they seem to have fulfilled their task ill. Pardon me, I go to help them. Come, father." They went, and presently the señor awoke from a doze, induced by the heat of the fire, to see the custodian of the place staring at him in amazement, not unmixed with awe. "What's the matter with the man, and what does he want, Ignatio?" he asked me in Spanish. "He wonders at your white skin and fair hair, señor, and says that he does not dare to speak to you because you must be one of the heaven born of whom their legends tell. Wherefore he asked me to say that the water to wash in and raiment to put on have been made ready for us if we will come with him." Accordingly, we followed the Indian, who led us into the passage at the back of the sitting chamber, and thence to a small sleeping room, one of several to which the passages gave access. In this room, which was lit by an oil lamp, were two bedsteads covered with blankets of deerskin and cotton sheets, and laid upon them fine linen robes and serapes made in alternate bands of grey and black feathers, worked on to a foundation of stout linen. Standing upon the wooden stools in a corner of the room, and half filled with steaming water, were two basins, which the señor noticed with astonishment were of hammered silver. "These people must be rich," he said to me so soon as the keeper of the place had gone, "if they fashion the utensils of their rest houses of silver. Till now this story of the sacred city, of which Zibalbay was /cacique and Maya heiress apparent, has always sounded like a fairy tale to me, but it seems that it is true after all. The man's manner shows that Zibalbay is a very important person." Then we put on the robes that had been provided for our use, not without difficulty, since their make was strange to us, and returned to the eating room. Presently the curtain was drawn, and the Lady Maya joined us. The Lady Maya, but so changed that we started in astonishment. Different indeed was she to the ill-clad and travel-stained girl who had been our companion for so many weeks. Now she was dressed in a robe of snowy white, bordered with embroidery of a royal green, and having the image of the heart traced in gold thread upon the breast. On her feet were sandals also worked in green, while round her throat, wrists, waist, and ankles shone circlets of dead gold. Her dark hair was no longer fell loose about her, but was twisted into a single knot and confined in a little golden net, and from her shoulders hung a cloak of pure white feathers, relieved here and there by the delicate yellow plumes of the greater egret. "Like you, I have changed my garment," she said in explanation. "Is the dress ugly that you look astonished?" "Ugly," answered the señor. "I think it is the most beautiful that I ever saw." "This is the most beautiful dress you ever saw? Why, friend, it is the simplest that I have. Wait till you see me in my royal robes, wearing the great emeralds of the heart. What will you say then, I wonder?" "I cannot tell, but I say now that I don't know which is the most lovely, you or your dress." "Hush," she said, laughing, yet with a note of earnestness in her voice. "You must not speak thus freely to me. Yonder in the pass, friend, I was the Indian girl, your fellow traveller. Here I am the Lady of the Heart." "Then I wish that you had remained the Indian girl in the pass," he answered after a pause. "But perhaps you jest?" "I was not altogether jesting," she answered with a sigh. "You must be careful now, or it might be ill for you or me, or both of us, since by rank I am the greatest lady in this land, and doubtless my cousin Tikal will watch me closely. See, here comes my father." As she spoke, Zibalbay entered, followed by the two Indians bearing food. He was simply dressed in a white toga-like robe, similar to that which had been given to the señor and myself. A cloak of black feathers covered his shoulders, and round his neck was hung a massive gold chain, to which was attached the emblem of the heart, also fashioned in plain gold. We noticed, as he came, his daughter Maya made a curtsy to him, which he acknowledged with a nod, and that whenever they passed him the two Indians crouched almost to the ground. Evidently the friendship of our heart journeying was done with, and the person to whom we had hitherto thought and spoken as an equal must henceforth be treated with respect. Indeed, the proud-faced, white-bearded chief seemed so royal in his changed surroundings that we were almost moved to follow the example of the others and bow whenever he looked at us. "The food is ready," said Zibalbay. "Such as it is, be seated, I beg of you." "Nay, daughter, you need not stand before me. We are still fellow wanderers, all of us, and ceremony can stay till we have come to the City of the Heart." Then we sat down, and the Indians waited on us. What the dishes consisted of we did not know, but after our long privations it seemed to us that we had never eaten so excellent a meal or drunk anything so good as the native wine with which it was served. Still, notwithstanding our present comfort, I think the señor's heart misgave him, and that he had presentiments of evil. Maya and he loved one another, but he felt that things were utterly changed, as she herself had shown him. While they wandered, in some sense he had been head of the party, as, to speak truth, among companions of a coloured race, a white man of gentle birth is always acknowledged to be by right of blood. Now things were changed, and he must take his place as an alien wanderer admitted to the country upon sufferance, and already this difference could be seen in Zibalbay's manner and mode of address. Formerly he had called him señor, or even friend. Tonight, when speaking to him, he used a word which meant foreigner or unknown one, and even myself he addressed by name without adding any title of respect. One good thing, however, we found in this place, who had lacked tobacco for 6 weeks and more, for presently the Indian entered bearing cigarettes made by rolling the herb in the thin sheath that grows about the cobs of Indian corn. "Come hither, you," said Zibalbay to the Indian when he had handed us the cigarettes. "Start now to the borders of the lake, and advise the captains of the village of the corn growers that his lord is returned again, commanding him in my name to furnish 4 travelling litters to be here within 5 hours after sunrise. Warn him also to have canoes in readiness to bear us across the lake, but, as he values his life, to send no word of our coming to the city. Go now and swiftly." The man bowed, and snatching a spear and a feather cloak from a peg near the door, vanished into the night, heedless of the howling wind and the sleet that thrashed upon the roof. "How far is it to the village?" asked the señor. 10 leagues or more," Zibalbay answered, "and the road is not good. Still, if he does not fall from a precipice or lose his life in a snowdrift, he will be there within 6 hours. Come, daughter, it is time for us to rest. Our journey has been long, and you must be weary. Good night to you, my guests. Tomorrow I shall hope to house you better." Thus bowing to us, he left the room. Maya rose to follow his example, and going to the señor, gave him her hand, which he touched with his lips. "How good it is to taste tobacco again," he said as Maya went. "No, don't go to bed yet, Ignatio. Take a cigarette and another glass of this agua ardiente, and let us talk. Do you know, friend, it seems to me that Zibalbay has changed. I never was a great admirer of his character, but perhaps I do not understand it." "Do you not, señor? I think that I do. Like some Christian priests, the man is a fanatic and, like myself, a dreamer. Also, he is full of ambition and tyrannical, one who will spare neither himself nor others where he has an end to gain, or thinks that he can promote the welfare of his country and the glory of his gods. Think how brave and earnest the man must have been who, in the bidding of a voice or a vision, dared in his old age, unaccompanied save by his only child, to lay down his state and travel almost without food through hundreds of leagues of bush and desert that none of his race had crossed for generations. Think what it must have been to him, who for many years has been treated almost as divine, to play the part of a medicine man in the forests of Yucatan, and to suffer in his own person and in that of his daughter insults and torments at the hands of low white thieves. Yet all this and more Zibalbay has borne without a murmur, because, as he believes, the object of his mission is attained." "But, Ignatio, what is the object of his mission, and what have we to do with it? To this hour I do not quite know." "Well, the object of his mission, and indeed of my life, is to build up the fallen empire of the City of the Heart. In short, señor, though I do not believe in his gods, in Zibalbay's vision I do believe, seeing that they have led him to me, whose aim is his aim, and that neither of us can succeed without the other." "Well, why not?" "Because I need wealth and he needs men, and if he will give me the wealth I can give him men in thousands." "I hear," answered the señor. "It sounds simple enough, but perhaps you will both of you find that there are difficulties in the way. What I do not understand, however, is what part Maya and I are to play in this affair, who are not anxious to regenerate a race or to build up an empire. I suppose that we are only spectators in the game." "Oh, how can that be, señor, when she is Lady of the Heart, and heiress to her father, and when," I added, dropping my voice, "you and she have grown so dear to one another?" "I did not know that you had noticed anything of that, Ignatio. You never seemed to observe our affection, and as you hate women so much, I did not speak of it," he answered, colouring. "I am not altogether blind, señor. Also, is it possible for a man not to know when a woman comes between him and the friend he loves? But of that I will say nothing, for it is as it should be. Besides, you might scarcely understand me if I did. No, no, señor, you cannot be left out of this game. You are too deep in it already, though what part you will play I cannot tell. It depends, perhaps, upon what the gods reveal to Zibalbay, or what he guesses that they reveal. At present he is well disposed towards you, because he thinks that the oracle may declare you to be the son of Quetzal, through whom his people shall be redeemed, since it seems that here and there is some such prophecy, and for this reason it is that he has not forbidden the friendship between you and his daughter, or so he hinted to me. But be warned, señor, for if he comes to know that you are not the man, then he will sweep you aside as of small account, and you may bid farewell to the Lady of the Heart." "I will not do that while I live," he answered quietly. No, señor, perhaps not while you live, but those who stand in the path of priests and kings do not live long. Still, though there is cause to be cautious, there is none to be downhearted, seeing that if you are not the man, I may be, in which case I shall be able to help you, as I have sworn to the Lady Maya that I will do, or perhaps you will be able to help me." "Oh, at any rate, we will stand together," said the señor. "And now, as there is no use in talking of the future, I think that we had better go to sleep. Of one thing, however, you may be certain: unless she dies or I die, I mean to marry Maya." End of chapter 13. Of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 14. The City of the Heart. While it was yet dark on the following morning, we were awakened by the voice of Zibalbay calling us. "Arise," he said, "it is time to start upon our road." "Are the litters here?" I asked. "No, nor can be for some hours. I desire to reach the city this night, therefore we must push forward on foot to meet them." Then we rose, and having no choice, dressed ourselves as best we could in the garments of the country that had been given to us, for our own were but rags in which we were ashamed to be seen. In the common room we found Zibalbay and the Lady Maya. "Eat," said the old man, pointing to food that was ready, "and let us be going." 10 minutes later we were outside the house. There was no wind, but at this great height the air is of so piercing a quality that we were glad to hold our serapes round us and walk briskly forward, Zibalbay leading the way. At first a grey gloom reigned, but presently snowy peaks shone through it, everywhere radiant with the hues of the unrisen sun, although the mountain sides beneath us were still wrapped in night. By degrees, as the light grew, we saw that the country at our feet was shaped like a bowl, whereof the mountain range upon which we stood formed the rim, and at the bottom of the bowl, fed by numberless streams that had their sources among the surrounding snows, lay the lake, the holy waters of this people. Of all this, however, we could as yet see little, since the vast expanse beneath us lay hidden in volumes of mist that moved and rolled like the face of ocean. Never before had we looked upon anything so strange as this dense garment of vapour, while the light of heaven gathered upon its surface, tinging it with lines and patches of colour. It seemed as though a map of the world was unrolled before us. Continents, seas, islands, and cities formed themselves, only to disappear in quick succession and assume new and endless shapes. "It is beautiful, is it not?" said Maya. "But wait until the mist breaks. Look, it is beginning." As she spoke, of a sudden the sea of mist grew thin and opened in its centre, and through the gap thus formed showed first the pyramids and temple tops, and then the entire panorama of the city, heart of the world, floating, as it were, upon the face of the holy waters. It was far away, but now that the night fog no longer thickened the air, so clear was the atmosphere, and so high were we above it, that it seemed to be almost at our feet. The city, which appeared to be surrounded by a wall, was built of marble or some other snow-white stone, whereon the light gleamed and flashed. It stood upon a heart-shaped island, and round about the shores of this island, stretching further than the eye could reach, sparkled the blue waters of the holy lake. By degrees the ring of mist rolled up the sides of the mountains and vanished, and in place of it the round bowl of the valley was filled with the clear light of day. Now we could see the shores of the lake, with their green fringe of reeds, and above them grasslands threaded by silver streams, and above these again, upon the flanks of the mountains, great forests of oak and cedars rising almost to the snow line. To the right and left of us the huge round-shouldered mountains stretched in a majestic sweep till they melted into the blue of the horizon, while here and there some tall, snow-robed peak, the cone of an extinct volcano, towered above us like a sentinel. "There lies my country," said Maya, with a proud wave of her hand. "Does it please you, white man?" "It pleases me well, Maya," he answered. "That now less than ever can I understand why you wish to leave it." "Because though lakes and mountains and cities full of wealth are fine things, it is not to these, but to the men and women among whom we live, that we must look for happiness." "Some people might think otherwise, Maya. They might say that happiness must be sought for in ourselves. At least I could be happy in such a land as this." "Oh, you think so now," she answered meaningly. "But when you have been a while in the city yonder, you will think otherwise. Oh," she went on passionately, "if indeed you care for me, we should never have crossed that mountain behind us. But you do not care for me, not truly. For all this time you have been half ashamed of your affection for an Indian girl whom you were obliged to become fond of, because she was pretty and you were so much with her, and she chanced to save your life. Yes, you would have been ashamed to marry me according to your customs, and to show me as your wife among the white people, me, the wandering Indian with a mad father whom you found in the hands of thieves. Here it will be different, for here at least I am a great lady, and you will see the people in the streets bow themselves to the ground before me. And if I say that a man shall die, you will see that man killed. Also here I have wealth more than any white woman, and you will be fond of me for that." "You are very unjust," he broke in angrily. "It is shameful that you should speak to me thus for no cause." "Perhaps I am unjust," she answered with a sob, "but there are so many troubles before us. First there is Tikal." "What does Tikal want?" answered the señor. "He wants to marry me, or become /cacique/ of the city in my right, which is the same thing. At least he will not give me up without a struggle. Then there is my father, who serves two masters only, his gods and his country, and who will use me like a piece in a game, if it suits his purpose. Yes, and you too. Our good days are done with. The evil ones have to come, and after them the night. Henceforward we shall find few opportunities of speaking even, for I shall be surrounded by officers and waiting ladies who will watch my every action and hear my every word, and my father will watch me also. Now I begin to be sorry that I did not take your advice and stop on the further side of the mountain," answered the señor. "Do you think that we could escape there?" "No, it is too late. They would track us down. We must go on now and meet our fate, whatever it may be. Only swear to me by my gods or your own, or whatever you hold dear, that you will cleave to me till I am dead, as I will cleave to you." And taking his hand in hers, she looked up appealingly into his face. At this moment Zibalbay, who was walking in front, lost in his own thoughts, chanced to turn and see them. "Come hither, daughter, and you, white man," he said in a stern voice. "Listen, both of you. I am old, but my sight and hearing are still keen, though yonder in the wilderness I took no heed of much that I saw and heard. Here in my own land it is otherwise. Learn, white man, that the Lady of the Heart is set far above you, and there, I think, she will remain. Do you understand my meaning?" "Perfectly," answered the señor, striving to control his anger. "But, chief, it is a pity you did not see well and tell me this before. Had it not been for what we and one dead were able to do to save you, today your bones would have been whitening in the forest. Why did you not tell me there that I was no fit company for your daughter?" "Because you were sent by the gods to do me service, and because there I had need of you, white man," answered Zibalbay quietly, "as maybe I shall have need of you again. Had it not been for that chance, we should have parted company on the farther side of the mountain." "In truth, I wish that we had," exclaimed the señor. "I may come to wish it too," said the old man grimly, "but you are here and not there, perhaps for so long as you shall live, and I would have you remember that you are in my power. A word from me will set you high or lay you low beneath the earth. Therefore be warned, and take with gratitude that which it shall please me to give you. No, do not look behind you. Escape is impossible. Submit yourself to my will in this and everything, and all shall be well with you." struggle against it, and I will crush you. I have spoken. Be pleased to walk in front of me, and do you, daughter, walk behind." Now I saw that the señor's rage was great, and that he was about to answer angrily, and lifted my hand in warning, while Maya looked at him entreatingly. He saw and checked himself. "I hear your words, chief," he said in a forced voice. "You are right. I am in your power, and it is useless for me to answer you." And he took his place in front as he had been commanded, while Maya fell behind. As I walked on side by side with Zibalbay, I spoke to him, saying, "You use sharp words toward him who is my brother, chief, and therefore towards me." "I speak as I must," he answered coldly. "Many troubles await me at the city. Did you not hear what that knave said last night, that Tikal, my nephew, whom I left in charge, rules in my stead? Well, this girl of mine, who is affianced to him, and through whom he hopes to govern in after years, may be the only bait that will tempt him from his place, for he looks upon me as one dead, and it will not please him to lay down the rod of power. How should it please him then, and those who follow him, to see a white stranger holding that daughter's hand and whispering in her ear? Ignacio, I tell you that such a sight would provoke a war against me. Therefore it is that I spoke sharply while there is yet time, and therefore you will do well to drive the nail home, seeing that if I fall, your plans will come to nothing, and your life be forfeit." I made no answer, for at that moment we turned a corner and came face to face with the bearers of the litters, whom Zibalbay had summoned to meet us. There were 40 of these men or more. For the most part they were tall and well shaped, with regular features, and, like Zibalbay and Maya, very fair for Indians, but the look upon their faces was different from any that I have seen among my people. It was not stupid or brutal or even empty. Rather did it suggest great weariness. The youngest man there, notwithstanding his rounded cheeks and eyes full of health, seemed as though he were weighed down by the memories of many years. Weariness was the master, not of their bodies, for they were very strong and active, but of their minds, and looking at them I could understand what Zibalbay meant when he said that his race was outworn. Even the sight of the white face of the señor, strange as it must have been to them, did not seem to move them. They stared indeed, muttering something to each other as to the length and colour of his beard, and that was all. But Zibalbay, they said in low, guttural tones, "Father, we salute you." Then, at a signal given by their captain, they cast themselves upon the ground before him, and lay there with outstretched arms as though they were dead. "Rise, my children," said Zibalbay, summoning the captain of the bearers. He talked to him while his companions ate food that they had brought with them, and I noted that what he heard seemed to give him little pleasure. Next he ordered us to enter the litters, which were of rude make, being constructed of chairs without curtains, lashed between 2 poles, and carried each of them by 8 bearers, for the road was very steep and rough. We started forward down the mountain, and in an hour we had left the region of snow behind and entered the cedar forests. These great trees grew in groups, which were separated by glades of turf. the home of herds of deer. So thick was their foliage that a twilight reigned beneath them, while from each branch hung a fringe of grey Spanish moss that swayed to and fro in the draught of the mountain's breeze. Everywhere stretched vistas that brought to my mind memories of the dimly lighted nave of the great cathedral at Mexico, roofed by the impenetrable boughs of these cedars, whereof the trunks might have been supporting columns, and the scent their leaves the odour of incense. After the cedar belt came the oak groves, and then miles of beautiful turf slopes, clothed in rich grass starred with flowers. Truly it was a lovely land. It was late in the afternoon before we descended the last of these slopes and entered the tract of alluvial soil that lay between them and the lake, where the climate was much warmer. It was easy to see by the irrigation ditches and other signs that this belt of country had always supplied the inhabitants of the City of the Heart with corn and all necessary crops. Here grew great groves of sugar cane and cocoa bushes laden with their purple pods, together with many varieties of fruit trees planted in separate orchards. Soon it became clear to us that the greater part of these ancient orchards were untended, since their fruit rotted in heaps upon the ground. Evidently they had been planted in more prosperous days, and now their supply exceeded the wants of the population. At length, as the evening began to fall, we entered the village of corn growers, a half-ruined place of which the houses were for the most part built of adobe or mud bricks, and roofed with a concrete of white lime. In the centre of the village was a plaza planted round with trees, and having in its midst a fountain, near to which stood a simple altar piled with fruit and flowers. Close to this altar the inhabitants of the village, to the number of 100 or so, were gathered to meet us. Most of the men had but just come in from their labours, for their garments and feet were stained with fresh earth, and they held copper hoes and reaping hooks in their hands. All of these wore upon their faces the same look of weariness of mind which we had noticed in the bearers. So monotonous were their countenances, indeed, that I turned my eyes impatiently to the group of women who were standing behind them. Like their husbands and brothers, these women were very fair for Indians and handsome in person, but they also had been stamped with melancholy. The sight of the señor's white skin and chestnut-coloured beard seemed for some few moments to rouse them from their attitude of listless indifference. Soon, however, they fell into it again and began to chat idly, or to play with and pull to pieces the flowers that every one of them wore at their girdle. There were hardly any children among the crowd, and it was strange to observe how great was the resemblance of the individuals composing it to each other. Indeed, had they all been members of a single family, it could not have been more marked, seeing that it was difficult for a stranger to distinguish one woman from another of about the same age. When Zibalbay descended from his litter, all those present prostrated themselves and remained thus till, followed by some of the headmen, he had passed into a house which was made ready for his use, leaving us without. "Do all your people look so sad?" I asked the Lady Maya. "Yes," she answered, "that is, all the common people who labour. It is otherwise with the nobles, who are of a different blood. Here, Don Ignatio, there are two classes, the lords and the people, and of the people each family is forced to work for 3 months in the year, the other 9 being given to them for rest. The fruits of their labour are gathered into storehouses and distributed among all the children of the Heart. but the temples, the /cacique, and many of the nobles have their own serfs who have served them from father to son." "And what happens if they will not work?" asked the señor. "Then they must starve, for nothing is served out to them or their families from the common store, and when they grow hungry they are set to the heaviest tasks." Now we understood why these people looked so weary and listless. What could be expected from men and women without ambition or responsibility, the gain of whose toil was placed to the public credit and doled out to them in rations? In my old age I have heard that there are teachers who advocate such a system for all mankind, but of this I am sure, that had they dwelt among the people of the heart, where it had been enforced for many centuries, they would cease to preach this doctrine, for there, at least, it did not promote the welfare of the race. Presently a messenger came from Zibalbay to summon us into the house, where we found an ample meal prepared, consisting chiefly of fish from the lake, baked wild fowl, and many sorts of fruit. By the time we had finished eating and had drunk the chocolate that was served to us in cups of hammered silver, the night had fallen completely. I asked Zibalbay if we should sleep there, to which he replied shortly that we were about to start for the city. Accordingly we set out by the light of the moon, and were guided to a little harbour in the shore of the lake, where a large canoe fitted with a mast and sail, and manned by 10 Indians, was waiting for us. We embarked, and the wind being off land, hoisted the sail and started towards the island of the Heart, which stood at a distance of about 15 miles from the mainland. The breeze was light, but after the cold of the mountains the air was so soft and balmy, and the scene so new and strange, that I, for one, did not regret our slow progress. Nobody spoke in the boat, for all of us were lost in our own reflections, and the Indians were awed to silence by the presence of their lord, who alone seemed impatient, since from time to time he pulled his beard and muttered to himself. So we glided across the blue lake, whose quiet was broken only by the whistling wings of the wild fowl travelling to their feeding grounds, by the sudden leaps of great fish rising in pursuit of some night fly, and by the lapping of the water against the wooden sides of the canoe. Before us, luminous and unearthly in the perfect moonlight, shone the walls and the temples of the mysterious city which we had travelled so far to reach. We watched them growing more and more distant, minute by minute, and as we watched, strange hopes and fears took possession of our hopes. This was no dream. Before us lay the fabled golden town we so longed to see. Soon our feet would pass its white walls, and our eyes behold its ancient civilization. "What waits us there?" whispered the señor, looking at Maya. She heard his words and shook her head sadly. There was no hope in her eyes, which were dimmed with tears. Then he turned to me as though for comfort. The easy fires of enthusiasm burnt up within me, and I answered, "Fear not, the goal is won, and we shall overcome all difficulty and danger. The useless wealth of yonder golden city will be ours. By its help I shall wreak the stored up vengeance of ages upon the oppressors of my race, and create a great Indian dominion stretching from sea to sea, whereof this city shall be the heart." He heard and smiled, answering, "It may be so. For your sake I trust that it will be so. But we seek different ends, Ignatio," and he looked again at the Lady Maya. On we glided through the moonlight and the silence, for from the town came no sound save the cry of the watchmen calling the hours as they kept their guard along the ancient walls. At length we entered the shadow of the holy city, lying dark upon the waters, and the Indians, getting out their paddles, for the wind no longer served us, rowed the canoe up a stone embanked canal that led to a water gate. We halted in front of the gate, where there was no man to be seen. In an impatient voice Zibalbay bade the captain hail the guardian of the gate, and presently a man came down the steps, yawning, and inquired who was there. "I, the /cacique/," said Zibalbay. "Open." "Indeed, that is strange," answered the man, "seeing that this night the /cacique/ holds his marriage feast at the palace yonder, and there is but one /cacique/ of the people of the Heart. Get back to the mainland, wanderers, and return in the daytime when the gates stand wide." When Zibalbay heard these words he cursed aloud in his anger, but Maya started as though with joy. "I tell you that I am Zibalbay. Come home again, your lord, and no other," he cried, "and you will be wise to do my bidding." The man stared and hesitated, till the captain of the boat spoke to him, saying, "Fool, would you become food for fishes? This is the Lord Zibalbay, returned from the dead." Then he hastened to open the gate as fast as his fear would let him. "Pardon, father, pardon," he cried, prostrating himself, "but the Lord Tikal, who rules in your place, has given it out that you were dead in the wilderness, and commanded that your name should be spoken no more in the city." Zibalbay swept by him without a word. When he had passed up the marble steps and through the waterway pierced in the thickness of the frowning walls, he halted, and, addressing the captain of the boatmen, said, "Let this man be scourged tomorrow at noon in the market place, that thenceforth he may learn not to sleep at his post." On the further side of the wall ran a wide street, bordered by splendid houses built of white stone, which led to the central square of the city, a mile or more away. Up this street we walked swiftly and in silence, and as we went I noticed that much of it was grass grown, and that many of the great houses seemed to be deserted. Indeed, though light came from some of the latticed window places, I could see no sign of any human being. "Here is the city," whispered the señor to me, "but where are the people?" "Doubtless they celebrate the wedding feast in the great square," I answered. "Hark, I hear them." As I spoke, the wind turned a little, and a sound of singing floated down it, that grew momentarily clearer as we approached the square. Another 5 minutes passed, and we were entering it. It was a wide place, covering not less than 30 acres of ground, and in its centre, rising 300 feet into the air, gleamed the pyramid of the Temple of the Heart, crowned by the star of holy fire that flickered eternally upon its summit. In the open space between the walls of the enclosure of this pyramid and the great buildings that formed the sides of the square, the inhabitants of the city were gathered for their midnight feast. All were dressed in white robes, while many wore glittering feather capes upon their shoulders, and were crowned with wreaths of flowers. Some of them were dancing, some of them were singing, while others watched the tricks of jugglers and buffoons. But the most of their number were seated round little tables, eating, drinking, smoking, and making love. We noticed that at those tables the children seemed the most honourable guests, and that everybody petted them and waited on their words. Nothing could be more beautiful or stranger to our eyes than this innocent festival celebrated by the moon. Yet the sight of it did not please Zibalbay. Along the side of the square ran an avenue of trees bearing white flowers with a heavy scent, and Zibalbay motioned to us to follow him into their shadows. Many of the tables were placed just beyond the spread of these trees, so that he was able to stop from time to time, and unseen himself, to listen to the talk that was passing at them. Presently he halted thus opposite to a table at which sat a man of middle age and a woman young and pretty. What they said interested him, and we who were close by his side understood it, for the difference between the dialect of these people and the Maya tongue is so small that even the señor had little difficulty in following their talk. "The feast is merry tonight," said the man. "Yes, husband," answered his companion, "and so it should be, seeing that yesterday the Lord Tikal was elected /cacique/ by the Council of the Heart, and today he was wedded in the presence of the people to Nahua, the beautiful child of the Lord Mattai." "And it was a fine sight," said the man, "though for my part I think it early to proclaim him /cacique/. Zibalbay might yet come back, and then—" "Oh, Zibalbay will never come back, husband, or the Lady Maya either. They have perished in the wilderness long ago. For her I am sorry, because she was so lovely and different from the other great ladies, but I do not grieve much for him, for he was a hard taskmaster to us common people. Also he was stingy. Why, Tikal has given more feasts during the last 10 months than Zibalbay gave in as many years. Moreover, he has relaxed the laws, so that we poor women may now wear ornaments like our betters," and she glanced at a gold bracelet upon her wrist. "It is easy to be generous with the goods of others," answered the man. "Zibalbay was the bee who stored. Tikal is the wasp who eats. They say that the old fellow was mad, but I do not believe it. I think that he was a greater man than the rest of us, that is all, who saw the wasting of the people and desired to find a means to stop it." "Oh, certainly he was mad," answered the woman. "How could he stop the wasting of the people by taking his daughter to wander in the wilderness till they died of starvation, both of them? If anybody dwells out yonder, it is a folk of white devils of whom we have heard, who kill and enslave the Indians that they may rob them of their wealth, and we do not desire that such should be shown the way to our city. Also, what does it matter to us if the people do waste away? We have all things that we wish. Those who come after must see to it. Yet, wife, I have heard you say that you desired children." Suddenly the woman's face grew sad. "Ah," she answered, "if Zibalbay will give me a child, I will take back all my words about him, and proclaim him the wisest of men, instead of what he is, or rather was, an old fool gone crazy with vanity and too much praying. But he is dead, and if he were not, he could never do this. That is beyond the power of the gods themselves, if indeed the gods are anything except a dream. So what is the use of talking about him? Let us enjoy the feast that Tikal gives us, husband, and do not speak of children, lest I should weep and learn to hate those of my sisters who have been blessed with them." Then, at a sign from Zibalbay, we moved on, but Maya, hanging back for a moment, whispered, "Look at my father's face. Never have I seen him so angry, yet these tidings are not altogether ill," and she glanced at the señor. Now Zibalbay walked on swiftly, pulling at his beard and muttering to himself, till we came to the great archway where 2 soldiers armed with copper spears stood on guard, chatting with women in the crowd that gathered round the open door, and eating sweetmeats which they offered them. Zibalbay covered his face with the corner of his robe, and, bidding us to do likewise, began to walk through the archway, whereupon the two soldiers, crossing their spears, demanded his name and title. "By whose orders, do you ask?" said Zibalbay. "By order of our lord the /cacique, who celebrates his marriage feast with the nobles, his guests," answered one of them. "Say, are you of their number who come so late?" Then Zibalbay uncovered his face and said, "Look upon me, man. Did I command you to shut my own doors against me?" He looked and gasped. "It is the /cacique come home again." "How, then, do you say that you keep the doors by order of the /cacique? Can there be two /caciques in the City of the Heart?" asked Zibalbay in a bitter voice. Without waiting for an answer, he walked on, followed by the three of us, into the plaza or courtyard of the palace, where many fountains splashed upon the marble pavement. Passing beneath a colonnade and through an open doorway whence light flowed of a sudden, we found ourselves in a great wonderful chamber, 100 feet or more in length, having a roof of panelled cedar supported by a double row of wooden columns exquisitely carved, between which were set tables laden with fruit and flowers, drinking vessels, and other ornaments of gold. The walls also were cedar panelled and hung over with tapestries worked in silver, and ranged along them stood grotesque images of dwarfs and monkeys, fashioned in solid gold, each of which held in its hand a silver lamp. At the far end of this place was a small table, and behind it, seated upon throne-like chairs, were a man and a woman, having an armed guard on either side of them. The man was magnificently dressed in a white robe, broidered with the symbol of the heart, and a glittering feathered cloak. Upon his brow was a circlet of gold, from which rose a panache or plume of green feathers, and in his hand he held a little golden sceptre tipped with an emerald. He was of middle height, very stoutly built, and about 35 years of age, having straight black hair that hung down upon his shoulders. In face he was handsome, but forbidding, for his dark eyes shone with a strange fire beneath the beetling brows, and his powerful mouth and chin were a sullen look that did not leave them even when he smiled. The lady at his side was also beautifully attired in white bridal robes bordered with silver, and having the royal heart worked upon her breast, while on her brow, arms, and bosom shone strings of emeralds. She was young and tall, with splendid eyes and a proud, handsome face, somewhat marred, however, by the heaviness of the mouth, and it was easy to see that she loved the husband at her side, for all her looks were towards him. Between us and this royal pair stretched the length of the great hall, filled with people. For the most part of the feasters had left their seats, so splendidly attired and so bright with the flash of gems and gold that for a few moments our eyes were dazzled. The company, who may have numbered 200 or 300, stood in groups with their backs toward us, leaving a clear space at the far end of the chamber, where beautiful women in filmy silken robes, adorned with flowers and turquoises, were singing and dancing to the sound of pipes before the bride and bridegroom on the throne. End of chapter 14. The World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 15. How Zibalbay Came Home. For a while we stood unnoticed in the shadow of the doorway, observing this strange and beautiful scene, till, as Zibalbay was about to advance toward the throne, the Lord Tikal held up his sceptre as a signal, and suddenly the women ceased from their dance and song. At the sight of the uplifted sceptre, Zibalbay halted again and drew back further into the shadow, motioning us to do likewise. Then Tikal began to speak in a rich, deep voice that filled the hall. "Councillors and nobles of the heart," he said, "and you, high-born ladies, wives, and daughters of the nobles, hear me. But yesterday, as you know, I took myself the place and power of my forefathers, and by your wish and will I was proclaimed the sole chief and ruler of the people of the heart. Now I have bidden you to my marriage feast, that you may grace my nuptials and share my joy. For be it known to you that tonight I have taken in marriage Nahua, the beautiful daughter of the High Lord Mattai, chief of the astronomers, keeper of the sanctuary, and president of the Council of the Heart. Her, in the presence of you all, I name as my first and lawful wife, the sharer of my power, and your ruler under me, who, whatever betide, cannot be put away from my bed and throne, and as such I call upon you to salute her." Then, ceasing from his address, he turned and kissed the woman at his side, saying, "Hail to you, Lady of the Heart, whom it has pleased the gods to lift up and bless. May children be given to you, and with them happiness and power for many years." Thereon the great company bowed themselves before Nahua, his fair face flushed with pride and joy, and repeated as with one voice, "Hail to you, Lady of the Heart, whom it has pleased the gods to lift up and bless. May children be given to you, and with them happiness and power for many years." "Nobles," went on Tikal, when the ceremony was finished, "it has come to my ears that there are some who murmur against me, saying that I have no right to the ancient sceptre of Cacique, which I hold in my hand this night. Nobles, I have somewhat to say to you of this matter, that tomorrow, after the sacrifice, I shall repeat in the ears of the common people, and I say it having consulted with my council, the masters of the mysteries of the heart. Tomorrow a year will have gone by since Zibalbay, my uncle, who was /cacique before me, and his only child and heiress of his rank and power, the Lady Maya, my affianced bride, left the city upon a certain mission. Before they departed on this mission, it was agreed between Zibalbay, Maya, the Lady of the Heart, and myself, and the Council, the Brotherhood of the Heart, that I should rule as next heir during the absence of Zibalbay and his daughter, and that if they should not return within 2 years, that their heritage should be mine for ever. To this agreement I set my name with sorrow for them, as now I held that my uncle was mad, and in his madness went to doom, taking with him his daughter whom I loved. Yet when they were gone, I fulfilled it to the letter. But trouble arose among the people, for they will not listen to the voice of one who is not their anointed lord, but say, "We will wait till Zibalbay comes again, and hear his command upon these matters." Also, Zibalbay being absent, there was no high priest left in the land, so that until a successor was raised up to him, certain of the inmost mysteries of our worship must go uncelebrated, thus bringing down upon us the anger of the nameless God. So it came about that many pressed it on me that, for the sake of the people and the welfare of the city, I should shorten the period of my regency and suffer myself to be anointed. But remembering my promise, I answered them sharply, saying that I would not depart from it by a hair's breadth, and that, come what might, 2 full years must be completed before I sat me down in the place of my fathers. To this mind, then, I held till 3 days since, when those of the people to whose lot it fell in turn to pass to the mainland, there to cultivate the fields that are apportioned to the services of the temple, refused to get them to their labour, declaring that the high priest alone had authority over them, and there was no high priest in the city. Then, in my perplexity, I took counsel with the Lord Mattai, Master of the Stars, and he consulted the stars on my behalf. All night long he searched the heavens, and he read in them that Zibalbay, who, led by a lying dream, broke through the laws of the land and wandered across the mountains, has paid the price of his folly and is dead in the wilderness, together with his daughter, that was my affianced, and the lady of the heart. Is it not so, Mattai?" Now the person addressed, a stout man with a bald head, quick, shifting eyes, and a thick and grizzled beard, stepped forward and said, bowing, "If my wisdom is not at fault, such was the message of the stars, O Lord." "Nobles," went on Tikal, "you have heard my testimony, and the testimony of Mattai, whose voice is the voice of truth. For these reasons I have suffered myself to be anointed and set over you as your ruler, seeing that I am the heir of Zibalbay by law and by descent. For these reasons also, she to whom I was affianced being dead, I have taken to wife Nahu, the daughter of Mattai. Say, do you accept us?" Some few of the company were silent, but the rest cried, "We accept you, Tikal and Nahua, and long may you rule over us according to the ancient customs of the land." "It is well, my brethren," answered Tikal. "Now, before we drink the parting cup, have any of you aught to say to me?" "I have something to say to you," cried Zibalbay in a loud voice from the shadows wherein we stood at the far end of the hall. At the sound of his voice, the tones of which he seemed to know, Tikal started and rose in fear, but recovering himself, said, "Advance from the shadows, whoever you are, and say your say, where men may see you." Turning to his daughter and to us, Zibalbay bade us follow him and do as he did. Then, veiling his face with a corner of his robe, he walked up the hall, the crowd of nobles and ladies opening a path till we stood before the throne. Here he uncovered himself, as we did also, and standing sideways, so that he could be seen both by Tikal and all that company, he opened his lips to speak. Before a word could pass them, a cry of astonishment broke from the nobles, and of a sudden the sceptre fell from the hand of Tikal and rolled along the floor. "Zibalbay!" said the cry. "It is Zibalbay come back, or the ghost of him, and with him the Lady of the Heart." "Aye, nobles," he said in a quiet voice, although his hand shook with rage, "it is I, Zibalbay, your lord, come home, and not too soon as it would seem. What, my nephew, were you so hungry for my place and power that you must break the oath you swore upon the Heart, and seize them before the appointed time? And you, Mattai, have you lost your skill, or have the gods smitten you with a curse that you prophesy falsely, saying that it was written in the stars that we who are alive were dead, thereby lifting up your daughter to the seat of the Lady of the Heart?" Nay, do not answer me. Standing yonder, I have heard all your story. I say to you, Tikal, that you are a forsworn traitor, and that you, Mattai, that you are a charlatan and a liar who have dared to use the holy art for your own ends and the advancement of your house. On both of you will I be avenged, aye, and on all those who have abetted you in your crimes. Guards, seize that man and the Lord Hattai with him, and let them be held fast till I shall judge them." Now the soldiers that stood on either side of the thrones hesitated for a moment, and then advanced towards Tikal, as though to lay hands upon him in obedience to Zibalbay's orders. But Nahua rose and waved them off, saying, "What? Dare you to touch your anointed lord? Back, I say to you. If you would save yourselves from the doom of sacrilege, living or dead, the day of Zibalbay is done, for the Council of the Heart has set his crown upon the brow of Tikal, and, whether for good or ill, their decree cannot be changed." "Aye," said Tikal, whose courage had come back to him, "the Lady Nahua speaks truth. Touch me not, if you would live to look upon this sun." But all the while he spoke, his eyes were fixed upon Maya, whose beautiful face he watched as though it were that of some lost love risen from the dead. Now, as Zibalbay was about to speak again, Mattai the astronomer bowed before him and said, "Be not angry, but hear me, my lord. You have travelled far, and you are weary, and a weary man is apt at wrath. You think that you have been wronged, and doubtless all this that has chanced is strange to you, but now is not the time for us to give count of our acts and stewardship, or for you to hearken. Rest this night, and tomorrow on the pyramid, in the presence of the people, all things shall be made clear to you, and justice be done to all. Welcome you, Zibalbay, and to you also, Daughter of the Heart, and say, who are these strangers that you bring with you from the desert lands across the mountains?" Zibalbay paused a while, looking round him out of the corners of his eyes like a wolf in a trap, for he sought to discover the temper of the nobles. Then, finding that there were but a few present whom he could trust to help him, he lifted his head and answered, "You are right, Mattai. I am weary, for age, travel, and the faithlessness of men have worn me out. Tomorrow these matters shall be dealt with in the presence of the people, and there, before the altar, it shall be made known whether I am their lord or you, Tikal. There, too, I will tell you who these strangers are, and why I have brought them across the mountains. Until then, I leave them in your charge, for your own sake, charging you to keep them well. Nay, here I will neither eat nor drink. Do you come with me?" And he called to certain lords by name whom he knew to be faithful to him. Then, without more words, he turned and left the hall, followed by a number of nobles. "It seems that my father has forgotten me," said Maya with a laugh when he had gone. "Greeting to you all, friends, and to you, my cousin Tikal, and greeting also to your wife, Nahua, who, once my waiting lady by the gift of fortune, has now been lifted up to take my place and title. Whatever may be the issue of these broils, may you be happy in each other's love, Tikal and Nahua." Now Tikal descended from the throne and bowed before her, saying, "I swear to you, Maya." "No, do not swear," she broke in, "but give me and my friends here a cup of wine and some fragments from your wedding feast, for we are hungry. I thank you." How beautiful is that bride's robe which Naua wears, and surely those emeralds were once my own. Well, let her take them from me as a wedding gift. Make room, I pray you, Tikal, and suffer these ladies to tell me of their tidings, for remember that I have wandered far, and it is pleasant to see faces that are dear to me." For a while we sat and ate, or made pretence to eat, while Maya talked thus lightly, and all that company watched us, for we were wonderful in their eyes, who never till now had seen a white man. Indeed, the sight of the señor, auburn-haired, long-bearded, and white-skinned, was so marvellous to them that, unlike the common people, they forgot their courtesy and crowded round him in their amazement. Still, there were two who took small note of the señor or of me, and these were Tikal, who gazed at Maya as he stood behind her chair, serving her like some waiting slave, and Naua, his wife, who sat silent and neglected on her throne, sullenly noting his every word and gesture. At length she could bear this play no longer, but rising from her seat, began to move down the chamber. "Make room for the bride, ladies," said Maya. "Cousin, good night. It grows late, and your wife awaits you." Then, muttering I know not what, Tikal turned and went, and side by side the pair walked down the great hall, followed by their guard of soldiers. "How beautiful is the bride, and how brave the groom," said Maya, as she watched them go. "As yet I have seen couples that looked happier on their wedding day. Well, it is time to rest. Friends, good night. Mattai, I leave these strangers in your keeping. Guard them well, and bring them to my apartments tomorrow after they have eaten, for it is my father's will I would show them something of the city before the hour of noon, when we meet upon the temple top." When she had gone, Mattai bowed to us with much ceremony and begged us to follow him, which we did, across the courtyard and through many passages to a beautiful chamber dimly lighted with silver lamps that had been made ready for us. Here were beds covered with silken wrappings, and on the table in the centre of the room cool drinks and many sorts of fruits, but so tired were we that we took little note of these things. Bidding good night to Mattai, who looked at us curiously and announced that he would visit us early in the morning, we made fast the copper bolts upon the door and threw ourselves upon the beds. Weary as I was, I could not sleep in this strange place, and when from time to time my eyes closed, the sound of feet passing without our chamber door roused me again to wakefulness. Of one thing I was sure, that Zibalbay was not wanted here in his own city, and there would be trouble on the morrow when he told his tale to the people, for certainly Tikal would not suffer himself easily to be thrust from the place he had usurped, and he had many friends. Doubtless it was their feet that I heard outside the door as they hurried to and fro from the chamber where Mattai sat taking counsel with them. What would be our fate, I wondered, in this struggle for power that must come? These people feared strangers so much I could read in their faces, and doubtless they would be rid of us if they might. Well, we had a good friend in Maya, and the rest we must leave to Providence. Thinking thus, at length I fell asleep, to be awakened by the voice of the señor, who was sitting upon the edge of his bed, singing a song and looking round the chamber, for now the daylight streamed through the lattices. I wished him good morrow, and asked him why he sang. "Because of the lightness of my heart," he answered. "We have reached the city at last, and it is far more splendid and wonderful than anything I dreamed of. Also the luck is with us, for this Tikal has taken another woman in marriage, who, to judge from the look of her, will not readily let him go, and therefore Maya has no more to fear from him. Thirdly, there is enough treasure in this town, if what we saw last night may be taken as a sample, to enable you to establish 3 Indian empires if you wish, and doubtless Zibalbay will give you as much of it as you want. Therefore, friend Ignacio, you should sing as I do, instead of looking as gloomy as though you saw your own coffin being brought in at the door." I shook my head and answered, "I fear you speak lightly. There is trouble brewing in this city, and we shall be drawn into it, for the struggle between Tikal and Zibalbay will be to the death. As for the Lady Maya, of this I am certain, that, wife or no wife, Tikal still loves her and will strive to take her. I saw it in his eyes last night. Lastly, it is true enough that here there is boundless wealth, but whether its owners will suffer me to have any portion of it to forward my great purposes, useless though it be to them, is another matter. There was a man in the Bible called Job, and he had a friend named Eliphaz. I think you are that friend come to life again, Ignacio," answered the señor, laughing. "For my part, I mean to make the best of this present, and not to trouble myself about the future or the politics of this benighted people. But hark, there is someone knocking at the door." I rose and undid the bolt, whereon attendants entered bearing goblets of chocolate and little cakes upon a tray. After we had eaten, they led us to the baths, which were of marble and very beautiful, one of them being filled with water from a warm spring, and then to a chamber where breakfast was made ready for us. While we sat at table, Mattai came to us, and I saw that he had not slept that night, for his eyes were heavy. "I trust that you have rested well, strangers," he said courteously. "Yes, lord," I answered. "Well, it is more than I have done, for it is my business to watch the stars, especially my own star, which just now is somewhat obscured," and he smiled. "If you have finished your meal, my commands are to lead you to the apartments of the Lady Maya, who wishes to show you something of our city, which, being strangers, may interest you. By the way, if I do not ask too much, perhaps you will tell me to what race you belong," and he bowed to the señor. "We have heard of white men here, though we have learned no good of them, and tradition tells us that our first ruler, Cucumatz, was of this race. Are you of his blood, stranger?" "I do not know," answered the señor, laughing. "I come from a cold country far beyond the sea, where all the men are as I am." "Then the inhabitants of this country must be goodly to behold," answered Mattai gravely. "I thank you for your courtesy, son of the sea, in answering my question so readily. I did not ask it from curiosity alone, since the people in this city are terrified of strangers and clamour for some account of you." "Doubtless our friend Zibalbay will satisfy them," I said. "Good. Now be pleased to follow me." Mattai led us across courts and through passages till we reached a little ante room filled with ancient carvings and decorated with flowers, where some girls stood chatting. "Tell the Lady Maya that her guests await her," said Mattai. Then he turned to take his departure, adding in a low voice, "Doubtless we shall meet at noon upon the pyramid, and there you will see I know not what. Whatever befalls, be sure of this, strangers, that I will protect you if I can. Farewell." One of the girls vanished through a doorway at the further end of the chamber, and, having offered us seats, the others stood together at a little distance, watching us out of the corners of their eyes. Presently the door opened, and through it came Maya, wearing a silken serape that covered her head and shoulders, and looking very sweet and beautiful in the shaded light of the room. "Greeting, friends," she said as we bowed before her. "I have my father's leave to show you something of this city that you long so much to see. These ladies here will accompany us, and a guard, but we shall want no litters until we have ascended the great temple, for I desire that you should see the view from thence before the place is cumbered with the multitude. Come, if you are ready." Accordingly we set out, Maya walking between us, while the guards and the ladies followed after. Crossing the square, which had been the scene of the festival of the previous night, but now in the early morning was almost deserted, we came to the enclosure of the courtyard of the pyramid, a limestone wall worked with sculptures of hunting scenes, relieved by a border of writhing snakes, and at intervals by emblems of the heart. At the gateway of this wall we paused to contemplate the mighty mass of the pyramid that towered over us. "There is one in the land of Egypt that is bigger," so said the señor, although he believed this to be a more wonderful sight because of its glittering slopes of limestone, whose expanse was broken only by a vast stair that ran up its eastern face from base to summit. "It is a great building," said Maya, noting our astonishment, "and one that could not be reared in these days. Tradition says that 25,000 men worked on it for 50 years, 20,000 of them cutting and carrying the stone, and 5,000 laying the blocks." "Where did the material come from, then?" asked the señor. "Some of it was hewn from beneath the base of the temple itself," she answered, "but the most was borne in big canoes from quarries on the mainland, for these quarries can still be seen." "Is the pyramid hollow, then?" I asked. "Yes, in it are many chambers, for the most part store and treasure houses, and beneath its base lies crypts, the burying place of the /caciques/, their wives and children. There is also the holy sanctuary of the heart, which you, being of the Brotherhood, may perhaps be permitted to visit. Come, let us climb the stair." Then she led us across the courtyard to the foot of the stairway, 40 feet or more in breadth, which ran to the platform of the pyramid in 6 flights, each of 50 steps and linked together by resting places. Up these flights we toiled slowly, followed by the ladies and the guard, till at length our labour was rewarded, and we stood upon the dizzy edge of the pyramid. Before us was a platform bordered by a low wall large enough to give standing room to several thousand people. On the western side of this platform stood a small marble house, used as a place to store fuel and as a watchtower by the priests, who were on duty day and night, tending the sacred fire which flared in a brazier from its roof. Situated at some distance from this house, and immediately in front of it, was a small altar wreathed with flowers, but for the rest of the area was empty. "Look," said Maya. The city beneath us was built upon a low, heart-shaped island, so hollow in its centre that once it might have been the crater of some volcano, or perhaps a mere ridge of land enclosing a lagoon. This island measured about 10 miles in length by 6 across at its widest, and seemed to float like a huge green leaf upon the lake, the holy water of these Indians, of which the circumference is so great that even from the summit of the pyramid, a few small and rocky islets excepted, land was only visible to the north, whence we had sailed on the previous night. Elsewhere the eye met nothing but blue expanses of inland sea, limitless and desolate, unrelieved by any sail or sign of life. Amidst these waters the island gleamed like an emerald. Here were gardens filled with gorgeous flowers and clumps of beautiful palms and willows, framed by banks of dense green reeds that grew in the shallows around the shores. So luxuriant was the vegetation, fertilized year by year with the rich mud of the lake, and so lovely were the trees and flowers in the soft light of the morning, that the place seemed like a paradise rather than a home of men. And as was the island, so was the city that was built thereon. Following the lines of the land upon which it stood, it was heart-shaped, a heart of cold white marble lying within the glowing green. All about it ran a moat filled with water from the lake. On the hither side of this moat stood a wall 50 feet or more in height, built of great blocks of white limestone that formed the bedrock of the island, which wall was everywhere sculptured with allegorical devices and designs and the gigantic figures of gods. Wherein the oblong of this wall lay the city, a city of palaces, pyramids, and temples, or rather the remains of it, for we could see at a glance that the population was unable to keep so many streets and edifices in repair. Thus palm trees were to be found growing through the flat roofs of houses and in crevices of the temple pyramids, while many of the streets and avenues were green with grass and ferns, a narrow pathway in the centre of them showing how few were the feet of the passers-by. Even in the great square beneath us the signs of traffic were rare, and there was little of the bustle of a people engaged in the business of life, although this very place had been the scene of last night's feast, and would again soon be filled with men and women flocking to the pyramid. Now and again some graceful, languid girl, a reed basket in her hand, might be seen visiting the booths where rations of fish from the lake, or of meat, fruit, dried venison, and cocoa were distributed according to the wants of each family. Or perhaps a party of men on their way to labour in the gardens stopped to smoke and talk together in a fashion that showed time to be of little value to them. Here and there also a very few children played together with flowers for toys. In the shadow of the palaces, barracks, and stone houses which bordered the central square, but this was all. For the rest, the place seemed empty and asleep. End of chapter 15. The World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 16. On the Pyramid. Does not the city lie very low? I asked Maya, when we had studied the prospect on every side. To my eye, its houses seem almost upon a level with the waters of the lake. I believe that is so, she answered. Moreover, during those months of the year that are coming, the surface of the lake rises many feet, so that the greater part of the island is submerged, and the water stands about the wall. How, then, do you prevent the town from being flooded? Asked the señor. If once the water flowed in, the place would vanish and every soul be drowned. Yes, friend, but the waters never rise beyond a certain height, and they are kept from flooding the city by the great sluice gate. If that gate were to be opened in the time of inundation, then we should perish every one, but it never is opened during those months. For if any would leave or enter the city, they do so by means of ladders leading from the summit of the wall to floating landing stages on the moat beneath. Also, night and day the gate is guarded. Moreover, it can be moved from one place only by those that know its secret, who are few." "It seems a strange place to build a city," answered the señor. "I do not think that I should ever sleep sound during the months of inundation, knowing that my life depended upon a single gate." "Yet men have slept safely here for 1,000 years or more," she said. "Legends tell us that our ancestors, who came up from the coast in ancient days, settled on the island by command of their gods, choosing this hollow bed of land to build in, so that rather than submit themselves to foes, as their fathers were forced to do, in the country beyond the mountains, they could, if need were, flood the place and perish in the water. For this reason it is that the holy sanctuary of the nameless god, the Heart of Heaven, is hollowed deep in the rock beneath us, for the waters of the lake would flow in upon it at a touch, burying it and all its treasures from the sight of man for ever. Now, if you have seen enough, I will take you to visit the public workshops, where fish is dried, linen woven, and all other industries carried on that are necessary to our comfort." And turning, she led the way with her ladies toward the head of the stairs. As we drew near to it, however, 3 men appeared upon the platform, in one of whom I knew Tikal. Seeing Maya, he advanced toward her, bowing as he came. "Lady," he said, "learning that you were here with these strangers, I have followed you to beg that you will speak with me alone for some few minutes." "That I cannot do, cousin," she answered coldly, "for who knows what colour might afterwards be put upon my words. If you have anything to say to me, say it before us all." "That I cannot do," he replied, "for what I have to say is secret. Still, for your father's sake, and perhaps for your own, you will do well to hear it." "Without a witness I will not listen to you, Tikal." "Then, lady, farewell," he said, and turned to go. "Stay, cousin. If you fear to speak before your own people, let this stranger," she pointed to me, Ignacio, "be present at our talk. He is of our blood and can understand our tongue, a discreet man, moreover, one of the Brethren of the Heart." "One of the Brethren of the Heart? How can a stranger be a Brother of the Heart? Prove it to me, wanderer." And drawing me aside, he said certain words which I answered, giving him the signs. "Do you agree?" asked Maya. "Yes, lady, since I must, though it pleases me little to open my mind before a stranger. Let us step apart." And he walked to the centre of the platform, followed by Maya and myself. "Lady," he began, "my business with you is not easy to tell. For many years we were affianced, and both you and your father promised that we should wed when you returned from this journey." "Surely, as things are, cousin, it is needless to discuss the matter of our betrothal," she broke in with sarcasm. "Not altogether needless, lady," he answered. "I have much to ask your pardon for, yet I make bold to ask it, Maya. You know well that I have loved you and love you dearly, and that no other woman has ever been near my heart." "Indeed," she said with a laugh. These words sound strange in the mouth of a new made husband of Nahua." "Perhaps, lady, and yet they are true. I am married to Nahua, but I do not love her, though she loves me. It is you whom I love, and when I saw you yesterday, all my heart went out to you, so that I almost hated the fair bride at my side." "Why, then, did you marry her?" because I must, because I believed you dead, and your father with you, as did every man in the city. You and Zibalbay being dead, as I thought, was it wonderful that I should wish to keep the place that many were plotting to take from me? This could be done in one way only, by the help of Mattai, the most clever and the most powerful man in the city, and this was Mattai's price, that his daughter should become the Lady of the Heart. Well, she loved me, she is beautiful, and she has her father's strength and foresight, so that among all the ladies in the land there was none more fitted to be my wife. Well, and you married her, and there's an end. You asked my forgiveness, and you have it, seeing that it does not befit me to play the part of a jealous woman. Doubtless time will soften the blow to me, Tikal," she added mockingly. "There is not an end, Maya, and I come to ask you today to renew your promise that you will be my wife." "What, cousin? Having broken your troth, would you now offer me insult? Do you then propose that I, the Daughter of the Heart, should be Nahua's handmaid? No, I propose that when Nahua is put away, you should take her place and your own." "How can this be, seeing that the Lady of the Heart cannot be divorced?" "If she ceases to be the Lady of the Heart, she can be divorced like any other woman. At the least, love has no laws, and I will find a way." "The way of death, perhaps?" "No, I will have none of you. Honour has laws, Tikal, if love has none. Go back to your wife and pray that she may never learn how you would have treated her." "Is that your last word, lady?" "Why do you ask?" "Because more hangs on it than you know. Listen. Very soon all the men in the city will be gathered on this place to hear your father's words, and to decide whether he or I shall rule. See, already they assemble in the temple square. Promise to be my wife, and in return I will yield to your father, and he shall be master for his life's days, and have his way in all things. Refuse, and I will cling to power, and matters may go badly for him, for you, and," he added threateningly, "for these strangers, your friends." "All this must befall as it chances," she answered proudly. "I do not meddle with such questions, nor do your threats move me. If you are so base as to plot mischief against an old man who has poured benefits upon you, plot on, and in due time meet with your reward. For myself, I tell you that I have done with you, and that, come what may, I will never be your wife." "Perhaps you may yet live to take back those words, lady," he said in a quiet voice. Then, with a low obeisance, he turned and went. "You have made a dangerous enemy, lady," I said, when he was out of earshot. "I do not fear him, Ignatio." "That is well," I answered, "but for my part I do. I think that his plans are ready, and that before this day is done there will be trouble. Indeed, I shall be thankful if we live to see tomorrow's light." By this time we had reached the others. "Are you weary of waiting?" she said to the señor, giving him a sweet look as she spoke. "Well, I should have been happier here than I was yonder. Give me your hand and lead me down the stair, for I am tired. Ah, friend, did you but know it, I have just dared more for your sake than I should have done for my own." "What have you dared?" he asked. "That you will learn in due time, if we live long enough, friend," she answered. "But oh, I would that we had never set foot within this city." 2 hours had passed, and following in the train of Zibalbay and Maya, who walked beside him once more, we found ourselves upon the summit of the pyramid. Now, however, it was no longer empty, for on it were collected men to the number of some thousands. Indeed, all the adult male population of the city. On one side of the altar were seated Tikal and his bride Naua, who was the only woman there, and some hundreds of nobles, all of whom I noted were armed and guarded by a body of soldiers that stood behind them. On the other side were many vacant places, and as Zibalbay with Maya and all the great company of followers that he had gathered advanced to take them, Tikal and every man present on the pyramid uncovered their heads and bowed in greeting to him. After a few moments' pause, 2 priests came forward from the watch house behind the altar, and having laid upon it an offering of fresh flowers, the elder of them, who was robed in pure white, uttered a short prayer to the nameless God, the Heart of Heaven, asking that he would be pleased to accept the gift and to send a blessing upon the deliberations of his people here assembled. Then Zibalbay rose to address the multitude, and I noted that his fierce face was pale and anxious, and that his hand shook, although his eyes flashed angrily. "Nobles and people of the City of the Heart," he began, "on this day a year ago, I, your hereditary ruler and /cacique, and the high priest of the Heart of Heaven, left this city on a certain mission. This was my mission: to find the severed portion of the sacred symbol that lies in the sanctuary of the temple, the portion that is called Day, which has been lost for many an age. You know that our race has fallen upon evil times, and that year by year our numbers dwindle, till at length the end of the people is in sight, seeing that within some few generations they must die out and be forgotten. You know also the ancient prophecy that when once more the 2 halves of the symbol of the heart, day and night, are laid side by side in their place upon the altar in the sanctuary, then from that hour this people shall grow great again. You know, too, how a voice spoke to me in answer to my prayers, bidding me, Zibalbay, to wander forth from the country of the heart, following the road to the sea, for there I should find that which was lost. Thither, then, having won the permission of my council, the Brotherhood of the Heart, I have wandered alone with my daughter, the Lady Maya, suffering much hardship and danger in my journeyings. And lo, I have found that which was lost, and brought it back to you, for here it hangs upon the neck of this Ignacio, who has accompanied me from the lands beyond the desert." Now a murmur of astonishment went up from the multitude, and Zibalbay paused a while. "Of this matter of the finding of the symbol," he continued, "I will speak more fully at the proper time, and to those who have a right to hear it, namely to the elected Brotherhood of the Heart in the holy sanctuary on the day of the rising of waters, being one of the 8 days in each year on which it is lawful for the Council of the Heart to meet in the sanctuary. But first, in this hour, I will deal with other questions. It is known to you that when I went upon my mission, I left my nephew Tikal to sit in my place, it being agreed between us and the Council that if I should return no more within 2 years, he should become /cacique of the people. I have returned within 1 year, and I find this, that already he has allowed himself to be anointed cacique, and more, that he, who was affianced to my daughter, has taken another woman to be his wife. Last night with my own ears I heard him proclaim his treachery in the hall of the palace, and when I spoke out the bitterness that was in my heart, I, your lord, was met with threats, and told that Tikal, having been anointed, could not now be deposed. I use the saying against him, nobles, I have been anointed and ruled over you and the people for many years, and can I then be deposed? I, who am not a traitor to my master, nor a forswearer on my oaths, as is my nephew yonder? Again he paused, and some of the audience, with those who had accompanied Zibalbay, shouted, "No!" But the most of them looked towards Tikal and were silent. Now Mattai rose from his place behind Tikal and spoke, saying, "As one who had to do with the anointing of Tikal to be /cacique when we believed you and the Lady Maya to be dead, I would ask you, Zibalbay, before we on this side of the altar answer you, to tell us openly what is the meaning of this journey that you have undertaken, and for what purpose have you brought these two strangers, who are named Ignacio and Son of the Sea, with you in defiance of the ancient law, which says that he who brings a stranger across the mountains into the land of the City of the Heart shall die together with the strangers?" Now, when Zibalbay heard this question, he started, for he had forgotten this law, and saw the cunning trap that Mattai had spread for his feet. Nevertheless he answered boldly, since it was his nature to be outspoken and straightforward. "It becomes you ill, Mattai, to question me, you who have proved yourself a plotter and a lying prophet, reading in the stars that I and my daughter were dead, while we still draw the breath of life beneath them. Yet I will answer you, and, scorning the subterfuge or falsehood, set out the whole matter in the hearing of the people, that they may judge between me, your party, and your master. First, I will say that I had forgotten the law of which you speak. Henceforth I have broken the letter, or, if at any time I remembered it, my necessities caused me to disregard it. Learn, then, that the stranger Ignacio is of royal Indian blood, and the holder of that symbol which I went forth to seek, and that the white man whom you call Son of the Sea is as a brother to him, and that both of them are the fellowship of the heart. The Lord Ignacio being no less a man than the master of the order in yonder lands, as I am here. This Lord Ignacio I summoned to me, and he came. He came, and with his companion, Son of the Sea, saved me and my daughter from shame and death at the hands of certain murderers, white men. Then, when we had escaped, we tried each other and laid the symbols side by side, and lo! Day and night came together, and they were one. Then also I told him the story of how it happened that I was wandering far from my own place, and he told me what was his purpose and the desire of his life. This is his purpose: to break the yoke that the white man has set upon the neck of the Indians in the far lands, and to build up a mighty Indian nation stretching from sea to sea, whereof this city, Heart of the World, shall be the centre and the capital. Then we made a compact together. a compact that cannot be broken, and it was this: that the Lord Ignacio, with the white man, his companion, from whom he will not be separated, should accompany us here, where the symbol should be set in the appointed place, that the prophecy may be fulfilled and the fortune return to us, that I should give him so much as he may need of the treasures which lie useless in our storehouses, wherewith he may arm troops and bring about his ends, and that in return he should bring to us what we need far more than gold and gems, men and women, with whom we may intermarry, so that our race, ceasing to dwindle, may once again multiply and grow great. Such, nobles, is our compact, and this is the path which the God who rules us has pointed out for our feet to tread. Accept it and grow great. Refuse it and perish. For know that not for myself do I speak, who am old and near to death, but for you and your prosperity forever. Be not bewildered or amazed, for, though these things are new to you, it may well chance that after the council of the heart has been celebrated in the sanctuary on the night of the rising waters, the God whom we worship, the nameless God under whose guidance all these things have come about, will reveal his purpose by the mouth of his oracle, and show what part these strangers and each of us shall play in the fate that is to be. O nobles and my people, let not your sight be dim, nor your heart hardened, and put not away the fortune and the future that lies before you. I have dared much for your sake. Dare a little for your own. Shut your ears and your gates, and rise in rebellion against me, and I tell you that soon there shall remain of you and your glorious home scarcely a memory. Be gentle, and be guided by my wisdom and the will of your gods, and your fame and power shall cover the world. Aye, you shall be to what you were as in the sun, in all its glory, to some faint and fading star. I have spoken. Now choose." He ceased, and for a while there was silence, the silence of amaze, for the nobles stared on each other, and such of the common people as were within earshot stood gaping at him with open mouths, since to them who did not meddle in matters of policy, and indeed thought little for themselves, his words had small meaning. Presently it was broken, and by Tikal, who sprang from his seat and cried aloud: "Of a truth, they were wise who said that this old man was mad. Have you heard and understood, O people of the heart? This is what you must do to fulfill the will of Zibalbay. First, you must set him in his place again, giving him all power, and me you must condemn to death or chains. Next, you must pardon him his breaches of the law that he of all men was bound to keep. Then you must hand over your treasures, the treasures hoarded by your forefathers for many a generation, to these wandering thieves whom he has brought with him. Lastly, you must open your gates, which have been kept secret for 1,000 years, to other thieves that they shall lead here, to whom, forsooth, you must give your women in marriage, that the race may be increased. Say, will you do these things, children of the heart?" Now all the nobles who stood behind Tikal shouted, "Never!" and the people beyond took up the cry with a voice of thunder, though the most of them understood little of what was passing. Tikal held up his hand, and there was silence. "You will not do them," he said, "and base indeed were you who had answered otherwise. What then will you do? Tell me first, whom do you choose as your ruler? My uncle, who now is mad and would bring you to shame and ruin, or me, who have sworn to preserve your ancient laws?" "We choose you, Tikal, Tikal," came the answer. "I thank you," he cried. "But what then shall be done with this old man and those whom he has brought with him to spy out our secrets and rob us?" "Kill them before the altar," they shouted, waving their swords. Tikal thought for a moment, then pointed toward us and said, "Seize these men." At his word 100 or more of the nobles, who evidently had been instructed to execute his orders, rushed at us suddenly. As they came across the open space, I saw the señor put his hand to his belt and said to him, "For the love of God, do not strike, for should you touch one of them, they will certainly kill us." "That they will do in any case, but as you wish," he answered. Then they broke on us. As they came, all the nobles who had followed Zibalbay to the crest of the pyramid gave way before their rush, leaving the three of us and the Lady Maya standing alone. "Cowards!" said Zibalbay, glancing behind him. Then he drew his /machete and with a shout cut down the foremost of those who assailed us, a great noble. In another instant the weapon was struck from him, and the señor and I were being dragged towards the altar, followed by Zibalbay and the Lady Maya, upon whom, however, our assailants laid no hand. "What shall we do with these men?" cried Tikal again. Again the nobles answered, "Kill them." So they threw us down, and men came at us with swords to make an end of us, which indeed they would have done quickly, had not the Lady Maya sprung forward and, standing over the señor, cried, "Hold!" in so piercing a voice that they stayed their hands. "Listen, people of the Heart," she said. "Would you do murder upon your own holy altar, staining it with the blood of innocent men? You talk of broken laws. Is there not a law in the city that none can be put to death except after trial before the /cacique and his council? Have these men been tried, and if so, by whom? You say that my father, your lawful ruler, is deposed. If that is so, not Tikal, I, whom am his heir, rule in his stead, and I have passed no judgment on them." Now at her words there was a murmur of mingled doubt and applause, but Tikal answered her, saying, "Lady, the law you quote holds good for you, for your father, and for every citizen of the Heart, however humble. But in the case of these men it does not hold, for they are wandering strangers and spies who can claim no protection from our justice, and therefore it is right that they should die." "It is not right that they should die," she answered passionately. "You, Tikal, have usurped my father's place, and now you would celebrate the beginning of your rule by a deed of the foulest murder. I tell you that these men are innocent of all offence. If any are guilty, it is my father and I, and if any should suffer, we should suffer more." She went on with flashing eyes. "If these men, to whom we have sworn safe conduct, must die, then for my part I will die with them, and whether I pass by your hands or by my own, may the curse of my blood rest upon you for ever and for ever." As she spoke, she snatched a knife from her jewelled girdle and stood before them, its bare blade glittering in the sunlight, looking so beautiful and fierce that the nobles fell back from her, and hundreds of the people applauded, saying, "Hear the Lady Maya and obey her. She is Kachikek and no other." Now Zibalbay, who had covered his eyes with his hands, looked up and said, "You are right, daughter. Since the people reject us and we cannot even protect our guests, it is best that we should die with them," and once more covered his eyes with his hands. Then there came a pause and a sound of whispering. I looked up between the sword blades which were pointed at my throat, and saw that Nahua was standing at the side of her lord and pleading with him. They were so close to me that my hearing, always keen, being sharpened moreover by the fear of instant death, enabled me to catch some of their talk. "She will do what she says," said Nahua, "and that will be your ruin, for if her father is hated, she is beloved, and many will rise to avenge her." "Why should she kill herself because of a white wanderer?" he asked. Nahua shrugged her shoulders and smiled darkly as she answered, "Who can tell? He is her friend, and women have been known to give their lives for their friends. Do as you will, but if Maya dies, I do not think that we will live to see another dawn." And leaving his side, she sought her chair again. Now Tikal looked at the señor, who was stretched upon the ground beside me, and seeing that there was hate in his eyes, I trembled, thinking that the end had come, then turned my head aside and began to commend my soul to the care of Heaven. As I prayed, he spoke, addressing himself to Maya. "Lady," he said, "you have appealed to the law on behalf of these wanderers, of your father, and of yourself, and by the law you shall be dealt with. Tomorrow the judges shall be chosen and hold their court here before the people." "It cannot be, Tikal," she answered calmly. "There is but one court which can try us four, all of whom are brethren of the Heart, and that is the Council of the Heart, sitting in the sanctuary which assembles on the 8th day from now, on the night of the rising waters. Is it not so, nobles?" "If you are the number of the brethren of the Heart, all of you, it is so," they answered. "So be it," said Tikal, "but still, then, I must hold you in safe keeping. Will it please you to follow Mattai, lady? And you, my lord Zibalbay? Guards, bring these men to the watch house yonder, and keep them there till I come to you." Maya bowed and turned to the audience. She said in a clear voice, "Farewell, my people. If we are seen no more, you will know that my father and I have been done to death by Tikal, who has usurped our place, and to you I leave it to take vengeance for our blood." End of chapter 16. Of the World by H. Rider Haggard. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 17. The Curse of Zibalbay. Thankful enough was I to rise from the ground, feeling my life whole in me. "Death has been near to us," said the señor, with something between a sob and a laugh, as we followed Zibalbay and Maya into the guard house. "He is near to us still," I answered, "but at least, unless Tikal changes his mind, we have won some days of respite." "Thanks to her," he said, nodding towards Maya, and as he spoke we entered the guard house, a small chamber with a massive door somewhat roughly furnished. So soon as we were in, the door was shut upon us, and we found ourselves alone. Zibalbay sat himself down, and, fixing his eyes upon the wall, stared at it as though it offered no hindrance to his sight. But the rest of us stood together near the door, listening to the turmoil of the multitude without. Clearly argument ran high among them, for we could hear the sound of angry voices, of shouting, and of the scurrying footfalls of the people leaving the pyramid by way of the great stair. "You have saved our lives for a while, for which we owe you thanks," said the señor to Maya presently. "But tell me, what will they do with us now?" "I cannot say," she answered. "But in this pyramid are chambers where we shall be hidden away until our day of trial. At the least I think so, for they dare not let us out among the people, lest we should cause a tumult in the city." Before the words had left her lips, the door was opened, and through it came Tikal, Mattai, and other of the great lords who were hostile to Zibalbay. "What is your pleasure with us?" asked Zibalbay, awakening from his dream. "That you should follow me," answered Tikal sternly, "you and the others," adding with a low bow to Maya, "Forgive me, lady, that I must exercise this violence toward you and your father, but I have no other choice if I would save you from the vengeance of the people." "It is not the vengeance of the people that we have to fear, Tikal," she answered quietly, "but rather your hate." "Which it is in your power to appease, lady," he said in a low voice. "It may be in my power, but not in my will," she answered, setting her lips. "Come, cousin, take us to the dungeon that you have prepared for us." "As you wish," he said, "follow me," and he led the way across the guard house, through a sleeping chamber of the priests that lay behind it, and to the farther wall that was hidden by a curtain. This curtain, on being drawn, revealed a small stone door, which Mattai, having first lit some lamps that stood ready in the chamber, unlocked with a key that hung at his girdle. One by one we passed through the door, Tikal preceding us, and Mattai, with others of the great lords, to number of 6, followed after us. Beyond the door lay a flight of 20 steps, then came a gate of copper bars. On the further side of this gate were flight upon flight of steps, joined together by landings, and running now in this direction, now in that, into the bowels of the mighty pyramid. At length, when my limbs were weary of descending so many stairs, we found ourselves in front of other gates, larger and more beautifully worked than those that we had already passed. Presently they clanged behind us, and we stood in a vast apartment or hall that was built in the heart of the pyramid. It would seem that this hall had been made ready for our coming, for it was lighted with many silver lamps, and in one part of it rugs were laid, on which stood tables and seats. So great was the place that the light of the lamps shone in it only as stars shine in the sky. Still, as we passed down it, we saw that its roof was vaulted, and that its walls and floors were of white marble, finely polished. Once, as we learned afterwards, it had served as the assembly rooms for the priests of the temple, but now that they were so few it was not used, except from time to time as a prison for offenders of high rank. At intervals along its length were doors leading to sleeping and other chambers. Some of the doors were open, and as we passed them, Mattai told us that these were to be our bed chambers. Then, having announced that food would be brought to us, the nobles, headed by Tikal, withdrew, and we heard the copper gates clash, and the echo of their footsteps die into nothingness upon the endless stairs. For a while we stood staring at each other in silence. It was Zibalbay who broke it, and his voice rang strangely in the vaulted place. "It is his hour now," he said, shaking his fists toward the stair by which Tikal had left us. "Let him pray that mine may never come." And suddenly he turned, and walking to the couch, flung himself upon it and buried his face in his hands. Maya followed him, and bending down, strove to comfort him, but he waved her away, and she came back to us. "This is a gloomy place," said the señor in a half whisper, for here one scarcely dared to speak aloud because of the echoes that ran about the walls. "But dark though it is, it seems safer than the summit of the pyramid, where sword points are so many," and he pointed to a little cut upon his throat. "It is safe enough," Maya answered with a bitter laugh, "and safely will it keep our bones till the world's end. Through these gates and the men that guard them there is no escape, and the death that threatened us in the sunshine shall overtake us in the shadow. Did I not warn you against this mad quest and the seeking of the city of my people? I warned you both, and you would not listen, and now the trouble is at hand, and your lives will pay for the forfeit for your folly and my father's." "What must be, must be," answered the señor with a sigh. "But for my part I hope that the worst is past, and that they will not kill us. It was your father's rashness which brought these evils on us, and perhaps misfortune may teach him wisdom." "Never," she answered, shaking her head, "for they are right. On this matter he is mad, as you, Ignatio, are mad also. Come, let us look at our prison, for I have not seen it till this hour." And taking one of the hand lamps that stood near, she walked down the length of the hall. At its further end were gates similar to those at which we had entered, and through them came a draught of air. "Where do they lead?" I asked. "I do not know," she answered. "Perhaps to the sanctuary by a secret way. At least the pyramid is full of these chambers that in old days were used for many things, such as the storage of corn and weapons, and the burying places of priests, thousands of whom are at rest within it. Now they are empty and deserted." As we walked back again, I stopped before a wooden door that stood ajar, leading into one of the chambers of which I had spoken. "Let us go in," said Maya, pushing it open, and we entered to find ourselves in a small room lined with shelves. On these shelves, each of which was numbered, lay hundreds of rolls thickly covered with dust. Maya took up one of them at a hazard and unrolled the parchment, revealing a manuscript beautifully executed in the picture painting of the Indians. "This must be nearly 1,000 years old," she said. "I know it by the style of the painting. Well, we shall not lack history to read while we sojourn here," and she threw the priceless roll back on its shelf and left the chamber. A few steps further on we came to another room, of which the door was closed, but so rotten was the woodwork with age that a push freed it from its fastenings, and we entered. Here also there were shelves packed, some of them with yellow and some of them with white bars of metal. "Copper and lead," said the señor, glancing at them. "Not so," said Maya with a laugh, "but that which you white men covet, gold and silver. Look what is painted above the shelves," and she held up the lamp and read: "Pure metal from the southern mines, set apart for the service of the temple of the heart, and of the temples of the east and west, of gold of such a weight, of silver such a weight." I stared, and my eyes grew greedy, for here is, in this one room, neglected and forgotten, was enough wealth to carry out my purpose 3 times over, stored there by the forefathers of this strange, rust-eaten race. Ah, if only I could see one half of it safe across the mountains, how great might be my future and that of the people which I lived to serve. "Perhaps you may win it after all, Ignacio," said Maya, interpreting my thoughts. "But to be frank, I fear that you will gain nothing except a sepulchre in these gloomy vaults." After this we visited several chambers that were empty or filled only with the wreck of moth-eaten tapestries and curious furniture, till at length we came to a room, or rather a large cupboard, piled from floor to ceiling with golden vessels of the most quaint and ancient workmanship, which had been discarded by the priests and cast aside as worthless. Why, I do not know. In front of this gleaming pile stood a chest unlocked that the señor opened. It was packed with priestly ornaments of gold set with great emeralds. Maya picked out a belt from the box and gave it to me, saying, "Take it, Ignacio, since you love such trinkets. It will set off that robe of yours." I took it and put it on, not over my robe, but beneath it. "My friend, it is the clasp of that belt, which now is yours, that I showed you a while ago, and with the price of the other gems in it I bought this /hacienda/ and all of its lands." Wearied at length of the sight of so much useless treasure, we returned to Zibalbay, who was seated as we had left him, lost in thought. At this moment the gates of our prison were opened, and men came through them, escorted by captains of the guard, bringing with them food in plenty, which they set upon the table, waiting on us while we ate, but speaking no word, good or bad. Our meal finished, they cleared away the fragments, and, having replenished the lamps and prepared the chambers for us to sleep in, they bowed and left us. For a while we sat round the table, Zibalbay and I in silence, and Maya and the señor talking together in a low voice, till at length the dreariness of the place overcame us, and, as though by a common impulse, we rose and sought the sleeping vaults, there to rest if we might. We slept and woke and rose again, though whether it were night or day here, where no light came, we could not tell. Indeed, as time went on, our only means of distinguishing the other from the other was by the visits of those who brought our food and waited on us. I think it must have been in the early afternoon of the day following that on which we were imprisoned that Tikal visited us, accompanied only by 4 guards. "A small band," said the señor as he watched them advance, "but enough to put us to death who are unarmed, for all our weapons have been taken from us, if such should be their will." "Have no fear, friend," said Maya, "they will not do murder so openly." By now Tikal stood before us bowing, and Zibalbay, who as usual was seated brooding at the table, looked up and saw him. "What do you seek, traitor?" he asked angrily, the blood flushing beneath his withered skin. "Would you kill us? If so, slay on, for thus shall I come the sooner to the bosom of that god whose vengeance I shall call down upon you." "I am no murderer, Zibalbay," answered Tikal with dignity. "If you die, it will be by the command of the law that you have broken, and not by mine. I am here to speak with you, if you will come apart with me." "Then speak on before these others, or leave your words unsaid," he answered, "for not one step will I stir with you, who doubtless seek some opportunity to stab me in the back." "Yet it is necessary that you should hear what I have to say, Zibalbay." "Say on then, traitor, or go." Tikal thought for a while, looking doubtfully at Maya, from whose face, indeed, he rarely took his eyes. "It is your wish that I should withdraw?" she asked shortly. "It is not mine," said Zibalbay. "Stay where you are, daughter." Now Tikal hesitated no longer, But bidding the guards who had accompanied him to fall back out of earshot, he said, "Listen, Zibalbay. Yesterday, before the gathering on the pyramid, I saw your daughter, the Lady Maya, and spoke with her, telling her that now, as always, I loved her, although believing her to be dead for reasons I state. I had taken another woman to my wife. Then I made her this offer, that if she would consent to become my wife, I would put away Nahua, whom I had married. Moreover, I added this, that I would give up my place as /cacique to you, Zibalbay, whose it is by right to hold for as long as you should live, and would not oppose you or your policy in any matter. I told her, on the other hand, that if she refused to become my wife, I would surrender nothing, but would put out my strength to crush you and her and these strangers, your friends. She answered me with contempt, saying that I might do my worst, but she would have naught to say to me. What happened afterwards you know, Zibalbay, and you know also the danger in which you stand today, now that power has left you, and your very life trembles in the balance." He paused, and Zibalbay, who had been listening to his words, amazed, turned to Maya and said sternly, "Does this man speak lies, daughter?" As she was about to answer, though what she meant to say I do not know, Tikal broke in. "What is the use of asking her, Zibalbay? It is to be thought that she will answer you truly. Though I speak truth, this wanderer who stands at your side can bear witness, for he was present and heard my words. This offer I made to her, and, that it may be put beyond a doubt, now I make it to her and to you again. If she will take me in marriage, for her sake I will put away Nahua. I will lay down my rule and set you in your place again with liberty, so long as you shall live, to work such follies as the gods may suffer. All these things I will do because I love her to whom I have been affianced from my youth, better than all, because she is as the light to mine eyes and the breath to my nostrils, and without her I have no joy in life, as I have had none since I believed her to be dead." Zibalbay heard, and rising, lifted his hand to the vault above him and said, "I thank thee, O God, who, in answer to my prayers, has shown me a way to escape from the troubles that beset me. Tikal, it shall be as you wish, and we will swear our peace upon the altar of the heart. Doubtless there will be trouble with Mattai and some of his following, but if we stand together they can be overcome. Rejoice with me, Ignacio, my friend, for now the seed that we have planted with so much labour shall bring forth golden fruit." Here I heard the señor groan with doubt and wrath behind me, and knew that, like so many others, this vision which filled my mind with glory must be brought to nothing because of the fancy of a woman. "Your pardon, Zibalbay," I interrupted. "The Lady Maya has not spoken." "Spoken!" he exclaimed. "Why, what should she say?" "What I said to my cousin Tikal yesterday," she answered, setting her lips and speaking very low, "that I will have nothing to do with him." "Nothing to do with him, girl? Nothing to do with him? Why, he is your affianced. You do not understand." "I understand well, father, but for naught that can be offered to me upon the earth will I give myself in marriage to a man who has treated you and me as my cousin Tikal has done, a man who could not keep his oath to you or wait for me one single year." "Cease to be foolish," said Zibalbay. "Tikal has erred, no doubt, but now he would make atonement for his error, and I can forgive him, so can you. Think no more of the girl's folly, Tikal, but send for ink and parchment and let us set down our contract. for I am old and have little time to lose. Perhaps before another year is gone, that which you would have snatched by force shall come to you by right." "I have the paper here, lord," said Tikal, drawing a roll from his breast. "But pardon me, does the Lady Maya consent?" Aye, she consents." "I do not consent, father, and if you drag me to the altar with yonder man, I will cry out to the people to protect me, or, failing their aid, I will seek refuge in death by my own hand if need be." Now Zibalbay turned upon his daughter, trembling with rage, but checking himself of a sudden, he said, "Tikal, for the moment this girl of mine is mad. Leave us, and come back in some few hours when you shall find her in another mind. Go now, I pray, before words are said that cannot be forgotten." Tikal turned and went, and until the gates at the far end of the hall had clashed behind him and his guards there was silence. Then Zibalbay spoke to his daughter. "Girl," he said, "I know your heart, and that your lips spoke a lie when you told us that it was because of Tikal's forgetfulness of his vow and troth that you will not marry him. There is another reason of which you have not spoken. This white man, who is in our country, is named James Strickland, is the reason. You have suffered yourself to look on him with longing, and you cannot pluck his image from your heart. Do I speak the truth?" "You speak the truth, father," she answered, placing her hand in that of the señor as she said the words. "To you, at least, I will not lie." "I thank you, daughter. Now hear me. I am sorry for your plight, and for that of the white man, if indeed he would make of you anything more than his toy. But here your wishes must give way to the common good. Who and what are you that your whims should stand between me and the fulfilment of my lifelong desire, between your people and their redemption? Must all these things come to nothing because of the fancies of a lovesick girl, whose poor beauty, as it chances by favour of the gods, can avail to bring them about?" "It seems so, father," she said, "seeing that in this matter my duty to myself and to him who loves me and whom I love is higher than my duty to you and your scheme. Everything else you, who are my father, may require of me, even to my life, but my honour is my own." "What shall I say to this headstrong girl?" gasped Zibalbay. "Speak, white man, and tell me that you renounce her, for surely your heart is not so wicked that it will lead you to consent to this folly, and to your own undoing, to stand between her and her destiny." Now all eyes were fixed upon the señor, who turned pale in the lamplight and answered slowly: "Zibalbay, I grieve to vex you, but your daughter's destiny and mine are one, nor can I command her to forsake me and give herself in marriage to a man she hates." "Yet it seems that you command her to break her plighted troth for your sake. Oh, most honourable white man," said Zibalbay with a bitter laugh. "Hearken, friend Ignatio, for you at least are not in love. Tell your brother there and this rebellious girl which way their duty lies. Teach them that we are sent here to dwell upon the earth for higher ends than the satisfying of our own desires. Stay, before you speak, remember that with this matter your own fate is interwoven. Remember how you have suffered and striven for many years. Remember all you have undergone to win what today lies in your grasp, the wealth that shall enable you to carry out your purposes. There in these vaults it lies to your hand, and if that not be enough, I will give you more. Take it, Ignacio. Take it to bribe your enemies and pay your armies, and become a king, a righteous king, crowned by heaven to complete the destinies of our race. Say such words as shall bend this girl and her lover to our will and triumph, or fail to say them, and some few days hence meet the end of a thief at the hands of Tikal. Now speak." I heard him, and my heart stood still within me. Alas, his words were true, and now was the turning point of my fate. If the girl would give herself to Tikal, who was mad with love of her, all would be well, and within 3 years the dream of my race might be fulfilled, and the vengeance of generations accomplished upon the spawn of the accursed Spaniard. There in these vaults, useless and forgotten, lay the treasures that I needed, and yonder in Mexico were men in thousands who by their means might be armed and led. But between me and them stood the desire of this woman and the folly of my friend. Oh, truly had my heart warned me against her when first I learned to know her lovely face, having foreknowledge of the evil that she should bring upon me. With her I could do nothing, for who can turn a woman from her love or hate? But with my friend it was otherwise. He would listen to me if I pleaded with him, seeing that not only my hopes but my very life hung upon his answer, and no true man has the right to bring others to their death in order that he may fulfil the wishes of his heart. Also, it would be better that he should be separated from this girl, who was not of his blood and colour, and whose love, soon or late, would be his undoing. Surely I should do well to pray him to let her go to the man whose affianced she had been, and he would do well to hearken to me. Almost the entreaty was upon my lips when Maya, reading my thought, touched me on the arm and whispered, "Remember your oath, Ignacio." Then I called to mind what I had promised yonder in the desert, when by her courage she had saved her lover's life, and knew that once again a woman must be my ruin, since it is better to lose all than to break such vows as this. "Zibalbay," I said, "I cannot plead your cause and mine, though not to do so be our destruction, seeing that I have sworn that, come what may, I will not stand between these two. Today, for the second time in my life, my plans are brought to nothing by the passion of a woman. Well, so it is fated, and so let it be." Zibalbay did not answer me, but turning to the señor, he said, "White man, you have heard from your friend words that should touch you more deeply than any prayer. Will you still cling to your purpose and take advantage of my daughter's madness? If so, know that your triumph shall be short, for when in some few hours Tikal comes again, I will tell him all and give you over to his keeping to deal with as he wishes. Then heaven help you, wanderer, for he is vengeful by nature, nor is that life likely to be long which bars the way between a ruler of men and the woman he would wed. Answer then, and for the last time, do you choose life or death?" "I choose death," he said boldly. if the price of life be the breaking of my troth and the surrender of my bride to another man, I am sorry for you, Zibalbay, and for you, Ignatio, my friend, I am still more sorry. But it is fate, and not I, that has brought these evils on you. If Ignatio here cannot forget his oath, how much less can I forget mine, which I have sworn with this lady? Moreover, worse fortune even than today's would come upon us if I did, seeing that such cowardice could breed no luck. Therefore, till the Lady Maya renounces me for good or for evil, in death or in life, I will cleave to her. And in death or in life, I will cleave to you, beloved, she said. Take such vengeance as you wish upon us, my father. Yes, if you wish it, give over this man to whom my heart drew me across the mountains and the desert to die at the hands of Tikal, but know that he will hold me faster dead than he did while he was alive, for into the valley of death I shall follow him swiftly. Now at last the rage of Zibalbay broke loose, and it was terrible. Rising from his seat, he shook his clenched hands above his daughter's head and cursed her, till in her fear she shrank away from him to her lover's breast. "As with my last breath," he cried, "I pray that curse of your souls, of your country, of your ancestors, and of me, your father, may rest upon you and your children. May your desire turn to ashes in your mouth, and may death rob you of its fruit. May your heart break by inches for remorse and sorrow, and your name become a hissing and a shame. Oh, I seem to see the future, and I tell you, daughter, that you shall win him for whose sake you brought your father to death and ruin. By fraud shall you win him, and for a while he shall lie at your side, and this is the price that shall be asked of you, and that you shall pay, the doom of your race and its destruction at your hands." He paused, gasping for breath, and Maya fell at his knees, sobbing. "Oh, father, unsay those words and spare me. Have you no pity for a woman's heart?" "Ay," he said, "so much pity as you have for my sorrows and grey hair. Why should I spare you, girl, who have not spared me, your father? My curse is spoken, and I will add this to it, that it will break your heart at last, ay, and the heart of that man who has robbed me of your duty and your love." Then suddenly he ceased speaking. His eyes grew empty. He stretched out his arms and fell heavily to the floor. End of chapter 17.